Call to order the Hastings-on-Hudson Board of Education meeting, October 1st, 2018. Oh, Charlie didn't show up either.
Yeah.
We're missing several key players.
That's what you just said.
I thought you said Janine.
Oh, no. I said Charlie.
So we're waiting for Charlie to kick off our superintendent report.
I always forget what my board docs password is. You think that by now it would have that,
Yay. Janine, are those the agendas?
Yes. Me too.
I just opened the meeting, Charlie. So
If anybody wants to print
we're
out.
ready for you.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I would like I don't want a computer.
Okay, thanks very much.
We usually
Go right to
do
the
something on it.
superintendent's report. I know it's a busy agenda tonight, so I just want to make a few opening remarks. I'm happy to announce, in addition to the 6 previously announced National Merit semifinalist students this year from Hastings, we have 5 additional students who were selected for the PSAT commended student. And those included David DeVito, Silas Allister, Grace Moon, Ethan Ponchna, and Sandra Tenderendi.
Sandra.
I'm sorry, thank you.
Sandra Tancredi?
Also, I should say that Nina Silverstein was recognized by the National Hispanic Recognition Program for her testing performance. 3 of our students were selected as participants and/or alternates for the NISMA All-State Conference that would be in Rochester this year. And other calendar, I would like to make some calendar notes coming up, you should be aware of. This Friday is what is called here Late Start Friday, so that the faculty will be working in the early morning on various staff development and planning. So kids come in a bit late that morning. Monday is Columbus Day, so there will be no school. I'd like to congratulate Ali Manley,
Allie Manley.
yes, who was selected as this week by the Journal as the Athlete of the Week. And the high school, I should mention, give a pitch here. The high school's fall play this year will be on October 9th and 10th. That's a Friday and Saturday evening. And the play will be the Laramie Chronicle. I will cut my other remarks short tonight because I know it's a very busy agenda. And those are all the announcements.
Charlie, can I just add one shout out from the Sports Booster Club?
Please.
Sports Booster Club is doing a fundraiser. You're probably seeing signs around town, lawn signs that say I support Hastings Sports. Yes, we do. And if you're interested in one, you can reach out to our booster club and you can buy one for yourself, or you can buzz somebody. In fact, there's somebody sitting here who's been buzzed, and have 10 signs put on their lawn for a temporary time. Anyway, it's a nice way to show support and raise some money.
Very good. It's nice to see a student rep tonight, too.
And Parker is, she's a senior, right? Or she graduated? Okay.
Time flies.
So welcome, Clay. And so if you've got something to report tonight, we'll pass it over to you in a little bit. But if you don't, that's okay. But we'll have the opportunity. So we have a packed agenda tonight. We've got with us district-wise Bob Fryer and Joanne Kaplan here to talk a little bit about superintendent search process, and want to maybe just walk through a little bit what we're up to. I think the board knows is fairly well aware of the process. We've talked about it a little bit, but I'll just walk us through at a very high level what we're doing, and then we'll pass it over to Joanne and Bob to just let the board know a little bit about the process and the timeline. I think the most important thing is that we understand dates and timelines is pretty critical, and then some of the ways that we need to engage as we go about this process. So district-wise helped us last year with our superintendent search. Unfortunately, we're in this same position now, but looking forward to a good and productive search. We're also going to be using, I think the board knows, Harold Coles is the superintendent of Southern Westchester BOCES, and he's going to be supporting Bob and Joanne in the search. So we'll have another set of eyes and ears around the state looking for other candidates. So looking forward to that. And we'll talk a little bit about, probably start advertising in pretty short order, probably in a month or two. We'll get a brochure up on the website. Probably launch another website. We had a website last time that I think the community really found useful. We put a lot of information up on the website. Something that you'll see in the board docs was about a 10-page document we put together last time, which was a profile of the superintendent. And that was about a year ago. I've read through it, helped actually create most of that document, and I'm pretty familiar with it. If you read through the details of the superintendent profile, I think most of it pretty much holds to the candidate we're looking for now. But what I'd ask the board to do is over the next week or so, read through that document closely and just get a sense, is there anything in there that you feel should change? Or we need to update. I don't think there's much, and I think it pretty much captures the essence of what we found important last time and what I think the community would find important this time. So to have a look through that. So with that, I thought maybe I'll pass it over to Bob and Joanne to just talk a little bit to the board about timeline and process. And last time we started at the end of December. So this is a bit of an easier time frame, but obviously we want to be focused and make sure we're doing things in the right time.
Before we turn it, I just want our community to understand that Bob and Joanne did guarantee their work, and because our superintendent left within the first year, their services are free for this year, and Southwest BOCES is free as well. So I just want the community to know that we're not spending money outside of whatever advertising and kinds of expenses we have, because I figured that was important.
Thanks.
So just to focus on the timeline, we're going to really start.
Would it be easier? Would it be easier? Yeah, just for the public to stand at the podium.
Or you want them to sit here for?
Well, you can do that, or it's probably easier just to stand.
Rather sit at the table?
Yeah, I'd rather sit.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
So come into the corner.
Should we go over there?
Yeah,
Here.
you can sit here.
Well, I'll just, here, why don't you take my seat? We'll all slide down one.
These two?
And just watch the cords.
All right, if anyone speaks out.
So we're going to start from the beginning of October. So now the board has been working on some language for the ad. I shared with you the ad from the last time. So Doug had shared with me actually today that the board has made some changes with that. So that's the first thing that we're working on. We'd like to start. Bob has been working on the language for the off-site application, and so we'd like to let that go live as soon as the board approves of that.
It's the exact same application as last time. So there's, it's been recreated, and really just as soon as the board gives me the okay, I can have it live.
We usually keep it open for a month to 2 months, so the date on that we should decide on that this evening. The ads last time were placed in NYSBA, Ed Weekly, NISCUS, SL Jobs, Alice, and National Alliance of Black School Educators. So the board needs to decide if they want to use those again, and if there are any other ones that they would like to use instead. Certainly. ALAS, which was Alice, was 6 weeks for $150. Then there was the National Alliance of Black School Educators, ran around the same time for $250. NYSBA, which was 4 weeks for $150. Ed Weekly, which was for 4 weeks, $395. Niscus, which was, again, the same amount of time, for $250. And then SL Jobs was $90 2 years ago, but $95 2 years ago, but when they realized what everybody else was charging, last year raises their prices to $149. And they're just kind of an incredible, they cast an incredible net out there. So that's up to the board. You did not use the times last time, although it was talked about. Bob and I have already started the informal recruiting and reaching out. We were given some names. Bob has made some phone calls. So that's kind of exciting. The brochure, again, I also shared with you. I heard there might be some changes. I think it's an excellent idea to put it on the website. I think that the site you had last time was amazing. I think as long as you have a tab on your home base of your webpage so people can click onto it, I think that would be terrific. And I also think that we should put the ability for people to click onto the application from that site as well. So that we give, if somebody hears there's an opening here, if they click onto your page, it's just another way to get them to the application. So that's all for October.
Well, so before we go there, I mean, when does the board want to open this up?
I mean, I think the question is, you know, I think we have to think about the pool, right? And so you're saying leaving it open for 4 to 6 weeks is about optimal?
I think, I mean, if I opened it now, like, I would probably close it just before Christmas. Is that right?
And so what is your thought on people who December 15th decide they're not going to sign a new contract and they might be possible candidates? Do we lose some of those?
We could do it January 1, so they have that break, but I wouldn't recommend continuing the advertisement. I think that you...
Right, we can leave the app open without continuing to advertise.
Right, I mean, we could close it, you know, New Year's Eve, you know, basically. And we'll probably have gotten started with meeting candidates prior to that anyway.
So if we opened it this week, we could then just close it then, or is that too long?
So it's October, November. It's a long time, but
I mean, I guess the thing I'm concerned about is if someone is really excited about our district and they put an app in October 15th, but they don't really hear back.
So here's the dip that we haven't gotten to November, and so November, Bob and I will start doing the informal screening and also meeting with them off-site. So if people are, if we think that they are the caliber and meet up to your standards and your profile, then we're going to meet with them beforehand, and we'll let them know that the application doesn't close until, so they won't be hanging around. They'll know what your plan, you know, will be.
I mean, personally, 3 months to me to have something open is a long time.
I think it's too long.
You know,
I think we have to have a fine balance between having an ad open long enough, being very conscious of holidays and when we get them, and how much we're going to be spending and how we're going to get the most bang for our buck in a sense. I think both the costs of keeping it open, and I just don't think, I think we have to be a little bit thoughtful of when we start and when we want to close it, if it's 4 to 6, if these are, if you're paying for 4 weeks in a chunk or something.
Let me add this, and this probably gets into another issue, so they may have to all be discussed at once. I personally feel very strongly that we need someone who's been a superintendent before. You know, again, no diss to Tony, but I think a small district with a skinny central office is a very, very challenging place for someone who's never been a superintendent. So I guess my question to you then is, and I don't know if the board hasn't really had the opportunity to discuss that, and I don't know if we're going to discuss it tonight or not, but if we do have a preference, or, you know, again, in my opinion, a strong preference for sitting sup, what window is best for that type of applicant?
I don't think it really matters any different than an assistant. We had a conference call with Doug and Tim about a month or so ago, and yeah, we had talked about that, and yeah, clearly the preference was either a sitting superintendent or someone who's been an assistant for many years. Certainly, the choice for us would be to find you a sitting superintendent somewhere else.
So, Tim,
And
Lisa's
I just want-
question.
Okay, and I was going to say one more thing. You said the application was going to stay the same. I would add for one more question to be added to it. I'm sure we ask, have you been convicted of a crime? But can we ask, have you ever been sued in a civil lawsuit? Not that, it could mean something, it couldn't, but it's something that I think the board should know about going in. I'm sorry,
Board
Joe.
should decide, agree on that. That's going to go into the application.
Oh, okay.
But in terms of, to go back to the question of if we were hoping to find someone who'd been a sitting superintendent, how do you back into that in terms of how much time, they have to give 6 months? So I think that also has to do in terms of what the window is and when we're advertising, when people are going to start looking, unless someone
really
just
don't.
says.
I mean, it really depends on their contract, but they can really resign anytime they choose, whether they have a contract or it's expiring.
Ideally, they probably would want to give them time,
Yeah.
because they wouldn't want to leave them, with a month's notice and run.
I've always thought that's the kind of superintendent
That we would want.
we would want, not somebody who's
Right.
going to give a month.
Right.
You know.
We're going to give sufficient time.
Because you wouldn't want it done to you.
Right, exactly. It's age-old.
Yeah.
So we're
as
back
far
to the
as-
timing
yeah.
of the application. If we
So it
start the
sounds like-
application,
Yeah.
we send it to you for approval.
It's the same application, there's nothing to approve.
Well, if we add this
Right.
one.
I could have one question, right.
So is it October 15? Is it November
Well,
1? Or?
do you have we would need I could use the same job description if you liked, and then I need the brochure.
Yeah, we'll have the brochure.
We'll have the brochure done this week.
Okay.
And Doug, the job description is what you sent to us? That's what we got today? Oh,
The job description is the one that was on there already, right?
Right, it was the one that you gave us last time, which was
Yeah.
district job
Yeah.
description.
We'll just have to take another close look at that, in case there's something we want to tweak.
I can
think we just have
send it to you tomorrow.
Yeah.
What was your question?
Okay, so just
looking at the dates.
logistically, October 15th or November 1st. Let's say you run for 8 weeks. Is there a big difference between October 15th to these 15 versus Nov 1 to Jan 1?
Other than the fact that we know of at least 2 others that are imminently starting searches in Westchester. So my preference, I think the sooner the better, personally.
Bob, can you share which districts are starting? Only if you're allowed to. I know New
So
Rochelle.
New Rochelle
is.
and
Potomac Hill Central.
Pocantico.
Pocantico.
Canico Hills?
Yes,
Okay. Well, what's good is they're both very different districts from ours, so.
doesn't matter though, you're going to be competing with candidates from those.
So you think October 15th or thereabouts, even sooner?
Yeah, as soon as you're ready, I mean, it just takes a click of a mouse.
We just have to be mindful of the holidays between.
That's why I'm looking at the calendar.
It's important, and I think it's important for many things. It works in your favor in a sense because people are home and they're looking through ads and they're like, okay, let me try. And it's
Also, people
also
are
against you
not
because
looking
people
at
are
all.
away. Right. So it's a double-edged sword in a way.
But I think December is a tricky month because people get very busy and they think, well, I'm just going to wait till on my break to look or
Right.
something.
Right.
That's why I was
Well, that's to the 31st.
That's why the November 1st.
That's why you think maybe starting sooner?
November 1st to January 1st, and then, you are asking people to compile quite a bit of information. When we go back to the applications we received before, they're, CVs that are going back their entire career history, it's recommendations, it's quite a portfolio that people are
And
putting
essays.
together. And when I think about a superintendent, even if, let's talk about a sitting superintendent, school year's still begun. People are busy getting schools, districts operational. I don't want to close before we're actually at a point where people have the downtime to compile the information we're asking for in the application. I don't know that that'll be a big issue. I think that we're attractive enough district that if you want to work here, you'll make the effort to put together that portfolio. But it nags me a little bit, which is why I asked the question.
But if I'm listening here, if I'm understanding, we can open it up October 15th to Jan 1, but we can start advertising November 1.
Sure.
Right,
And I think that would be smart.
right. So
Yeah, okay,
I
fine.
think that's probably the way to go.
Fine, and so word of mouth, people can,
Yeah.
Well, also, we actively recruit, you know?
right, and word of mouth, actively recruiting.
So you mean keep the search open, applications due by January 1st?
Yeah, so the application's open for 10
Advertise.
weeks, and we advertise for 8 weeks.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when you put that, though, on an application, that immediately, though, takes away the urgency. Okay, I got 3 months, you know, I don't have to do it, I don't have to submit until.
So then what do you suggest?
I just, you know, like, I mean, I think 2 months is long enough to keep an application open, personally. And, you know,
I guess we can go to October 15th to December 15th, and if we don't
That's
see,
fine, yeah.
we don't see what we like, you can keep it, you can make a decision to keep it open at that point in time.
Yeah,
right?
because, I mean, as much as they have to submit a lot of stuff, I mean, I've had people literally turn it around in 24 hours. And so if they want it, you know, and I think the longer we give them, you know, they kind of sit back and,
We do send them reminders, but
Yeah.
it's still,
So what's your best recommendation for time frame of application open and when to advertise?
what do you think?
I do November.
November 1st through the end of December? Okay.
For having the application open or for advertising or?
Well, definitely for advertising.
Right, I mean, it costs us nothing to open the application,
Right.
you know, and put it on our website and have it on your website, and word kind of gets out there.
We pay a year flat fee, so it's not a cost to you at all.
Yes, advertising.
Right.
Okay, I think, yeah, so we're close enough.
So you want to say October 15th, that will go live? And
Yeah.
then we'll start.
Aim for October 15th
Yeah.
to go live.
Okay.
Okay, and we'll get you the job description and the brochure.
So you're opening search on October 15th, and then it closes.
And
December 30th.
December 31st, but ads will go out on November 1st.
November 1st.
Right.
And question in terms of the board's process, are we speaking tonight or a different night in terms of what we're looking for? Like, you know, I can, you know, throw out a couple bright line issues, you know, sitting super or not, New York
No,
or not?
when we all read through that document and we think if we want to make changes, then we'll come back and talk about that. because
Okay, so that's what I wanted to know,
there-
process-wise, when we're doing
yeah,
that. Okay.
We can do that later.
Okay, so we just figured that piece of it out. November, December, Bob and I will begin the initial screening and vetting of the candidates. January, the board will receive their interview binders and begin their interviews. January, February, board does second and third interviews. February, candidate is chosen, site visits optional. March, contract negotiation begins and is approved. So that's the general timeline.
Does anyone have questions about the timeline or the process? Maybe people that weren't involved last time?
If we decide that we don't have any candidates that we really love, do we regroup at that point?
Have to.
Yes. And decide if we want to go a different direction for another year?
Actually, I have a question. You know, with the gentleman from BOCES, how do you...
Does that work? Right.
Yeah, I mean,
They work with-
how do you envision us
Working with them.
together?
I
mean,
agree.
working with him and stuff.
So my sense, I don't know, I've never obviously worked in that relationship, but my sense is that he's going to BOCES conferences throughout the year. So what he shared with us was that he's going to keep Hastings top of mind. We'll send him a copy of the brochure. We'll send him a copy of the application. Send him a copy of the document talking about the profile. And we'll spend some time with him to get him really related to what we're looking for. And then he would, much in the same way that we would, pass leads to you guys.
Okay.
And so I see
He would pass people to
district-wise.
them. Okay.
So I see Dr. Coles as another just opportunity to
Incentivize.
funnel candidates to
Right.
you. He's not going to be doing any interviewing, meeting, talking, anything like that.
Because, yeah, I mean, so, okay, cool. So, because, like, you know, as a BOCES superintendent, he can't really recruit someone,
Right.
but but I can. And so, yeah, any, certainly I'll pick his brain for
And
his
for all I
network
know,
and
there's
stuff like
another
that.
district that he's working with that's also looking for a super, so it may
Right.
get so I think he's got to really keep in mind, I think you'd be great for this district or that district. So I'm imagining being a BOCES superintendent, you're somewhat hamstrung just by the nature of your position. But if he sees someone and he says, I know you, I know Hastings, you seem like a great fit, if it works, it's great, and it's another set of candidates for you, and if it doesn't, it doesn't.
Got it. Okay.
So do you also recommend that we advertise in the same places? You don't?
No, yeah, I was actually gonna, before even answering where you think we should advertise, I remember I was not looking at the southwest BOCES side, but I was looking at the north, I was looking at, another BOCES side, and I was, there were sort of career resources on those sites as well. So I guess part of this, using that resource of Harold Coles at Southwest BOCES, I want to make sure that, our advertisement winds up on their, career search and
So
resources.
what I found with the BOCES, BOCES all tend to use OLAS,
Yes.
and they view what we use as competitive to OLAS,
They won't let us.
so they won't even let any searches we've ever done go on any of their sites.
So let's try to figure that
so-
out with this. Let's see if we can't figure that out with the relationship between Harold Coles and yourself.
Okay.
If that Harold Coles relationship can then allow us to get on OLAS that way. So now it's not district-wise being on OLAS. So let's see if we can.
Yeah, well, because we've also done it we've also had districts
Place it themselves.
try to place their own ads on OLAS,
Yep.
and they were turned down because we were doing the search. Because both BOCES, even though they don't make money on it, they don't charge for it, they are technically in the search business.
So what they ask for is what's the email address you have to respond to. So you can't give them district-wise,
Right.
and you can't give them our Apple-Track address to
Right.
click onto. So then, it's
So
becomes a little sticky.
what I suppose you could, we could talk to them is maybe create an email address here that, and then
Yeah,
just
let's-
set it up to forward to us, and then we could call the person and point them to an application.
Let's
you know?
table it for right now. You've raised the issues. Let's
Okay.
kind of work
Yeah,
out.
let's see
Yeah,
what
We'll be more than happy to work with
Yeah.
him in whatever parameters you could figure out to make it work.
We'll follow up and see if we can figure out a solution that makes everyone
Okay.
happy.
So if you're asking our opinion on where you should advertise,
Yes.
at Weekly, absolutely, because that's a national advertisement, and they really, they put out a really large umbrella, and so we would highly recommend them. I would absolutely recommend NISCUS, which is the superintendent, New York State Superintendent Association, and SL Jobs, which is also another amazing.
What does SL stand for?
School leadership.
Scholarship.
School leadership.
NISBA is hit or miss. Anybody that, so I've done research with who replies and from which, because I need to be able to guide our clients as to what.
Anybody who looks there is looking on the other
Correct.
things.
Yeah, most people for superintendents, they're going to look on NISCUS or Ed Week. And it's really up to you whether or not you want to use the New York Times. It's very expensive.
And what about Alice
We didn't
and
get anybody reply
We didn't
from
get
either one of those.
any activity from any of those sites.
the other, the black educators?
Yes, neither, we
not
didn't
one.
get any.
And what does Alice stand for?
Latino,
What is it?
Association of Latino Administrators and Superintendents.
Oh, I personally feel like we have to advertise on those places, even if we didn't get any responses. I don't know what other people think, but.
I agree.
I think we have to.
I personally am fine to forego NISBA, because I do think it's true. When you're looking, you're looking.
You're going to go to NISCUS.
Right.
Or school board site.
Yeah.
And as far as the times, anybody that's looking is going to look there. If it's not in New York, so they're going to look at Ed Weekly. If there, there are, not to say the Times isn't wonderful. We know their reputation, and we know, but
Yeah.
anybody that's looking is going to look in these, venues as well.
I think we're pretty good.
Where would you
Is
look,
there-
Charlie?
is there any-
I like those choices very much.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thanks, Charlie.
What other money?
And we could pick Charlie's brain for
Yeah, he's
your
been
network too,
amazing.
right? So,
Yeah, Charlie's.
I think you should pick
hopefully gonna
Charlie's
be a
brain.
part of
We
it.
will.
Sure.
Charlie's close with Harold as well. so-
and the good thing is, since we were here last time, one of our advisors, who's always been our advisor, is now the president of the New York State Superintendent's Association, so she knows virtually everyone.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Those were all the points I had. Does anyone have any final questions before we let these guys go? Okay.
So I know, so as far as the ad, so tomorrow, or I'll send you the job description we used last time. I think I have everyone, actually, you weren't on the board last time.
No, they weren't.
And these guys.
They weren't either.
You guys weren't either. So if I just, is there just a generic BOE?
Yeah, you can do BOE at Hastings, hhschools.gov.
Okay. Okay, so I'll send that tomorrow. And then once we get closer to the application, so you want me to add, have you ever been sued in a civil
.org.
lawsuit?
Have you ever
Huh?
been sued in a civil lawsuit?
It's .org, not .gov. Yeah, have you ever been
.org,
sued
yeah.
in a civil lawsuit? And I assume we ask, I know we should not ask about an arrest, but we do ask about a conviction.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and your attorneys generally do a full,
Wasn't, well,
they did.
it didn't
okay.
yield civil lawsuits.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and we'll get you, so you send an email to the whole group, we'll get you the advertisement copy. I guess that's really a no one issue. We've got some discussion among ourselves on the brochure document, which again, I guess is really for you just to look at and say, it makes sense, because ultimately it's going up on our website.
And it's also going to go on the application
Oh, it'll go on
website
the
as well,
application website as well. Okay.
and it'll probably go on our website too.
Okay, fine.
So, and it's, who is going to place the ads?
Did we do it last year, Janine, ourselves? Yeah.
Janine gave me, I did them, but Janine gave me the purchase orders beforehand, right?
Yeah, I think Lynn handles it now, the ads, when we have the ads, maybe.
Well, Maureen gave me, you gave me the
I
purchase
think I
orders.
do, yeah, I think. Yeah, she's talking about the almost, not that, but they're talking, yeah, you just give me an I'll create the
Yeah, so we'll run the same process.
Okay,
Like,
so
we'll
you
get
want
the
me to
actual
place
ad
it?
Copy. We'll get you the ad copy, and then
And so-
Noreen will be, in the loop as
She
well.
was,
and get the
you were
purchase.
incredible the last time, so, yeah.
All right, so we'll just have them bill directly to the
Yeah.
school. Yeah.
Well, she actually gave me the POs
I think
before
I
I
did the
even
POs.
placed
Okay.
the order, placed the ads. So if we're shooting for November 1, we have plenty of time to get them going.
Yeah, that's
Right.
And you have all the addresses and everything.
Yes, yes.
So,
just the deed, whatever you need to say.
And in the, I guess, in the application, or really in the ad and in the job description, well, not in the job description, I guess in the profile and in the ad, we should put something to the effect of, superintendent experience, or, I don't know, we'll have to think of the wording, multiple years in an assistant superintendent role, something like that.
A breadth of district leadership experience.
I like
and,
that.
and it's important because when you fill out
No?
district leadership
No,
can be
I don't think
a
that
range of
covers it.
things. You have to be
I
specific.
actually don't think that covers it, because you could be in a lot of positions in a district, but
We're putting that as
This is what I w-
preferred. I don't think it should be as required.
I don't think we should get into wordsmithing in this
could be
meeting.
desired.
But I was going to say,
Well, there's
I wonder if it's going to be a board meeting for us to agree on what we want the profile to be. Again, it doesn't have to be tonight, but I think we may need to talk through
Yeah,
how we
yeah,
feel
we're
about all
gonna-
these different issues. I don't know that it's appropriate for an email. It may be our next board meeting.
I just wanted to go back to the language in the ad. If you don't put it in, there is an area that you check off. Every one of these 5 have, it's not like I just put it in. There are different rubrics you have to follow for each one of them. And in many of them it says preferred, required, like it's a box you check off. But I don't think people read that. I think they read the ad.
think they read
So if
the
you
ad.
want it specific, the language should be in the ad as to whatever it is that you all decide on.
So we will have a meeting of the board to discuss the profile, if there's anything missing. We'll get add language and add copy done as draft, and everyone will have an opportunity
That's right.
to
We
weigh
have
in.
October 22nd is the next board meeting, and we're looking at advertising on November 1st.
Right.
So we can carve time on.
And we could call into that meeting if you want us to.
Yeah, we can carve time on the 22nd.
And can we, Janine and I, begin to work on POs even if you don't have the language ready, so that as soon as it's ready, we can just go? I mean, Maureen? Sorry, I'm looking at you. Is that okay?
Okay.
Is there anything we missed, or? Okay.
Lisa agrees.
Anything else, anyone, any questions anyone else has?
So,
We're on the same page.
As always, if anybody on the board has a question, please always feel free to email Bob and I, and we will reply to the whole board.
Right.
We'll see what we get in terms of.
yeah.
Okay, and I will send the whole board your email addresses. too.
Okay.
Great.
And as far as like our point of contacts, both of you, or?
You can use both of us here.
2 for the price of 1.
Excellent.
Terrific.
All right.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
very much, guys. Thanks for coming out.
Yeah, no, look, I agree. I think everybody, all of us, the difference between this year and last year is very big upgrades. So now it's just a question of being realistic. What's the structure on this year? The candidate pool, so
Okay.
first order of business is getting with the whole lot issue.
Well, if we can.
Okay.
At that point, you're into this.
We've got a few big things here left on the agenda, guys. Everyone stay focused here. Got a lot to cover still. Long night ahead of us.
Let's keep moving.
Okay, next we're going to move on to a capital bond update.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Capital bond update. I'll pass it over to Maureen to kick things off.
Yes, so, thank you. So tonight we have Veronica and Megan from our architectural firm that'll come tonight. And tonight, the focus of this evening is we wanted to, at each of our meetings, kind of unpack and discuss further some of the optional work that we started to discuss. And tonight, Veronica, some follow-up questions I know the board had wanted in terms of what are the options. If in fact we were looking at Hillside, what other options exist? Some of the questions were, would it be feasible to do some type of rental, some trailers? So we've been able to get all the pricing on that to discuss. There was an email sent out about would it be possible to either rent the existing St. Matthew's building. We did follow up. It actually has been sold already to a special act school that is currently using it. So that would not be an option for the district. And then also we are going to present other options of construction, such as something that would not include a cafeteria, and kind of just to show. So we're going to present all that tonight. And then Amy and John are also here, just in terms of talking about how the Hillside space is currently being used and what, some of the challenges are, and what, in doing some of this construction, what would it allow for space usage.
Maureen, I know
Yes.
we had also asked, I guess, for 2 other things, and I don't know if they're going to be addressed tonight. One is there have been a number of changes made to the space at Hillside where classrooms were chopped up into office space, and we were going to talk about reconfiguring those back to classrooms. And the other was, I think I had asked for information on what operating costs are associated with some of these additions. So, for example, if we were to go with the cafeteria, we have to hire a cafeteria staff.
But
And
now
what are
that
the
wouldn't cost
projections
us
on
money
that?
because the way our cafeteria, like all schools and most of the schools in the area, if not all, we're not self-operating. We bid that work out. So just like our cafeteria here, we have a guaranteed actually return of revenue from the cafeteria operation. So it would just be, it would be like the cleaning
okay,
of it, but it wouldn't be.
I guess that's the big question,
Right.
is what are the operating costs associated with these different things? So if we do an addition, what's the heating implication? What's the custodial staffing implication? And anything else that might add to our annual tax, not bond base,
Yes,
but tax base. So
right.
if we can have an idea of that, I think that's critical. So
sure.
for example, like in the bond, people didn't realize that by having grass, we have to increase our grounds crew, and
Right.
that costs us, you
Right.
know, tens of thousands every year.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I don't want to go on that, but yes.
No,
the-
but it's-
the cost of that,
should
you're
be-
right, is actually, we could almost increase the ground staffing because we have a hard time even keeping up with the increase of the staff when we added. So yes, I would agree. I think the one thing, and Joe and I did discuss this, I'm not sure if Veronica was there when we were talking about this. I mean, one of the things we felt, based on Joe, I think you may have been there for that conversation, he felt within the existing historical staff at Hillside, they would be able to handle it, because they feel that although the cafe would not be used, so it would be used differently, so it wouldn't require that type of cleaning. So they're already cleaning a space and again, with the cafeteria staff, just like the cafeteria staff here, part of, in the base bid, they clean the kitchen at night. We do the floors, they do everything else. So that is, again, that cost would not fall on us. And in terms of the overall heating and potentially air conditioning of the site, that would be an increase. And I know Joe was just, depending on how it's designed, you know, we don't have an exact cost on that yet. That would be something, that would be the only cost that I think that as of this time, we think would be an additional cost. So, but Joe did say would be designed much more energy efficient than we currently have, so. So I'm going to turn it over to Veronica just to
thanks,
kind of
Lauren.
follow with some of those items.
So thank you very much, everyone. First of all, I want to apologize for missing the last meeting. There was a miscommunication between myself and Joe in regarding to times and dates, and it's completely on me, and I understand how important your time is, and I assure you that it will not happen again, other than between 10:25 and 11:04, because I'm away with my family. But other than that, I'm here for every meeting, whatever you need. So I think there's a couple of things that we're going to go over tonight, and the slides are mostly focused on Hillside, but I think there was a couple of questions in regards to the PA system for both buildings as well as the boiler. So we can start with those if you like.
Right, so
or-
Lisa, you had kind of asked some questions that we followed. Well, we were looking at alternates for that, and I asked Veronica just to highlight, because out of all the base bid items, there were only two that, at least in our meetings, we found that there may be alternatives. I think the roofing, we're finding the pricing's consistent with
Yep.
what's in the bond. That needs to be done, the repointing, but the PA system, there may be some other
So we-
options for that.
Sure. So with the PA system, just to give you a little bit of a history, so back in 2015, when we completed the building conditions survey, it was reported by district staff, and that was really the custodians in the buildings, noting that there were some issues with the existing PA system, both at this building as well as the middle school and as well as at Hillside. So at that point, what we had recommended is a PA replacement. They know that there was failures, and that when we know that the system is antiquated and the parts are not available anymore. So it is an ongoing maintenance issue for the district. However, since then, Joe Moderano has done a great job in terms of trying to maintain the system and keep it running. And he did find a vendor who's willing to work with the district to provide a equipment that essentially is going to integrate the old system with, find equipment that will integrate the old system with some new equipment that essentially it's a controller for the system, and that would enable you to have a lockdown on the PA system where you currently don't have that capability through the PA system, and integrate it with the phones. And then it also would provide a new clock system. And that price is about $103,000 compared to the about $800,000 for a new PA system for both buildings. So that's just something to consider. However, it is important to keep in mind that the existing systems that you have, again, the equipment, is not replaceable anymore. So it's just a matter of keeping it up and running without actually being able to replace the equipment that is antiquated. So that's just the thing I want to bring to your attention.
Weren't you going to have your
Yeah, and in the end, so our electrical engineer is actually going to meet with Joe in order to just review the different options, because Joe did get some proposals. So we're going to continue with that, and we'll have more to report next time. And then the other item was the boilers. So again, back in 2015, when we prepared the building condition survey, the boilers were built or installed over in 1988, and what ASHRAE, which is the American Society of Heating and Refrigeration Engineers, notes that after 25 years, it's recommended to replace the boilers. So we can only, as design professionals, recommend replacement at that point and would recommend budgeting for that. However, at this point, we're in 2018, the boilers are 30 years old. Joe, again, does a great job maintaining them. There's no maintenance, I should say, there's no issues with them now because Joe continues to maintain them. You replaced the burners in 2015. So if you were to choose to go ahead with a boiler replacement in the near future, you would reuse those existing burners that you already paid for in 2015. But there's one thing to keep in mind with the boilers is that if the boilers were to break down, and we have had instances in districts where that does happen, and you need to bring a temporary boiler in, it runs about $10,000 a month to rent a temporary boiler while your engineer architect is designing the new system and getting it through the SED building permit process, which could take, depending on the process you go about, I know we've talked about third-party reviews and the typical review, anywhere from about 3 months to 40 weeks or so. So again, it's just something to keep in mind that you need to plan for the future. Hopefully the boilers don't break down, but we have no way of knowing that. And I will tell you the 2 other districts that where we are currently working with the boiler replacements, it was not something, we started working with the district fairly recently, and they were not planning on replacing the boilers, and it was not noted in their building condition surveys that they were in poor condition or recommending replacement, so the district did not plan for that replacement. So again, just something to keep in mind for the future. Now, with both of those districts, both districts tried to go through the route of an emergency project with the State Education Department. And in one district it worked because it wasn't noted on the building condition survey, and they were able to expedite the review and go through the emergency project submission. In the other district, because it was noted on the building condition survey, but the district chose to not budget for it, they just had to go through that regular route, and it did take over a year to get through SED, and ultimately they ended up having to rent boilers for 2 years, so just adding to that cost. So again, just some information to think about. And again, just keep in mind that if you decide, you don't have to, if the bond is whatever X amount of dollars, you don't have to actually do that work, but you can't do more than what's noted in that bond. So again, just something to plan for the future. And we just want to make sure that you're prepared for anything that might happen. So now for Hillside tonight, as Maureen mentioned, there was a couple of things that the district had asked us to look at, and one was just the different costs for some different options. And so the costs that we're noting here are total construction costs, and that's the hard construction costs that you pay to the contractor, as well as the soft costs, the contingencies, the architect engineer's fees, attorney's fees, surveys, and things of that nature, all the things that you've seen in the more detailed estimates. And contingency, correct, and contingency and escalation. So the first item, cafeteria and classroom addition. This is the number that we've been looking at for the last couple of meetings, $8,185,750, and that's a classroom addition for 300 students as well. I'm sorry, a cafeteria addition for 300 students as well as 4 classrooms, bathrooms in the classrooms, and an elevator addition. Elevator is part of the addition, which would be required because you need to provide handicap accessibility to that lower level. So that's the number that we've seen before, essentially the $8.2 million. Now the next number, the 4 classroom addition, is just a classroom addition, and we have floor plans to note these as well. Just a classroom addition, 4 classrooms total. It would be 2 on the top level, 2 on the bottom level, in line with the existing classrooms in the same location, and that's approximately $3.6 million.
Those are also with bathrooms?
Also, yeah, also with bathrooms. I mean, the only difference between these, the first 2 items, is one has the cafeteria and kitchen, and the other one does not.
So there's an elevator in the 4 classroom addition?
Yeah, you would have to have an elevator in the 4 classroom addition, correct, yep. Okay.
Is it correct to assume then that the cafeteria costs about $4.6 million?
Yes, whatever the difference is between those numbers, yep, yep. The next option is to potentially rent trailers, and we looked at it on a 2-year basis, and it would be 4 classrooms, so that's 2 sets of double-wide trailers. The rental for 2 years would be about $550,000, and I wanted to note, and we're going to talk a little bit about aid tonight, but if the district was to choose to rent these portable classrooms, trailers, they have a couple of different names, they are not aidable if they're placed on school property. I don't know why SED, God bless you, I don't know why SED clarifies on school property, because I don't know where else you would put them if it wasn't on school property. I guess you'd rent property or something like that or whatever. But either way, so they're not aidable at all if you put them on school property.
Can we use our Smart Schools bond money for the trailers? Wasn't there some
It
money?
was only if you had a pre-K program. There was a pre-K. They wanted for universal pre-K for people to add additional space.
So then the other option is to purchase the trailers outright, and again, for 2 sets of double-wide trailers, 4 classrooms, would be $780,000. And we had a cost of about $600,000 to purchase them, but we added the soft costs and the contingencies to that as well, just to be consistent with the other numbers.
And that also includes, because of course, they would need utility hookups. So
Utility
we would have to
hookups,
do like sewer
foundations.
lines,
Yep.
water lines, electric.
And where would they be?
Well,
We're gonna- yep,
Veronica's
we're
going to
gonna-
show
we're
some
gonna show you that.
options of where they would be.
Before we get to the,
Yep.
why does, to Jeremy's point, it's $4.6 million to, it's going into the cafe, right? So the physical space is already.
No, it would be a new cafeteria, a building.
Oh, new
a full
cafeteria, it's a
addition.
new construction, yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not although that's one of the things that we might,
Full build-out.
yeah.
So, yeah. I mean,
So roughly now, just to get a sense, construction costs for traditional bricks and mortar steel frame construction is about $450 a square foot for publicly bid work, which is, you're required to bid work publicly in New York State as a school district. So that's why the costs are so high. So just to talk a little bit about aid, we've done some preliminary work with the State Education Department in terms of what's aidable and what's not aidable. Right now, what SED is noting is based on the space that you have, that none of this work potentially would be aidable within with SED.
We had a conference call
Yeah,
today.
we had a conference call today. We
We
sent
have to
them
do additional work in terms of when you're doing classroom renovations, it came up last week, and I said to Veronica, I said, I know that the state's now also requiring, because I think they want the whole districts accountable just for like doing what they would maybe see as not necessary. So one of the things we're going to have to engage now, after the conversation, I said to Veronica, I feel pretty confident, I don't want to put words in the state's mouth, but based upon what she said today and doing my calculations, a few of the, like at least the 4 classrooms, I think they could potentially aid part of the addition. Like they may say to us, they use a ratio for how many kids should be in a classroom in the building. And I said to Veronica, but based upon what they're giving me at the K-3 level, our numbers do fit into that. So
Yeah,
they were saying we have
23
32
students, yeah.
classrooms, but they weren't counting in our special education classrooms. So upon first just using our enrollment numbers, she said, well, you have enough capacity for your building, because they're saying you can go up to 27 kids in the 4th grade
27
before
fourth
they
grade.
would allow it to be. Now, we could still do the work, but they could potentially aid part of the project. Like she had mentioned, like if we did 4 classroom extension, we may be able to prove to them we need 3 additional classrooms.
Yep.
So they would aid us on like, 3/4 of the work.
Just to put that into dollars, when you say aid, because I know one message I've been consistent with the community is it costs us roughly 58 cents on the dollar. So
Yes.
I assume that's what you're talking about,
Yes.
aid. So it's possible then that of the 4, so say cafeteria, say you don't need a cafeteria, that then we're dollar for dollar, we're not 58 cents
Right,
on the
but
dollar.
what's interesting, and I don't want to get too far off of the topic, but when we spoke to them, they said, well, you could take your existing cafeteria, build a kitchen, take over other classrooms. So they were actually, in Veronica, I was trying to explain to the person, I'm like, well, where will be, they're saying, well, just bump out, I see classrooms on this, just create that. And if it was a renovation, then some of it, destroying those classrooms and moving them, that would become
That would be
aidable.
aidable, correct.
But like not adding to it. So they were kind of saying you could build it within your infrastructure, and if you lost classrooms, then we would aid an extension to the building to replace those classrooms. So in some ways, you could still do it. It would just have to be done in a different manner. But also, I mean, I said it to Veronica, even the middle school renovation, now they're questioning that adding classrooms, they may or may not, we would have to go through the same facility, what is it called?
It's called
Facilities
instruction.
needs assessment to see if, in fact, they felt that we needed to do more classrooms in this building.
Is that new? Is that?
It's always, well, they definitely, when I went to that meeting last week, my state aid meeting, that was brought up by the Questar group. They said you have to, like now they're looking more closely
That's correct.
at when you're doing renovations to spaces.
And if the middle school, if the auditorium renovation is a straight auditorium renovation to,
It would not be
ameliorate the
aidable.
asbestos problem, that would be fully aidable?
Maybe not. We're not
Even
sure
if
yet.
it has asbestos?
Well, because it's not, and until you like start messing with it, there's a lot of asbestos in this building, but.
No, but I thought.
It is
you had told
definitely,
us
I would
that we're
agree.
having some plaster.
Well, it
falling
is, and I
exposing
guess, yes,
asbestos.
we would, again, we're hoping that when we go through this process with the state, that at Hillside, again, the cafeteria as it's proposed here may not be aidable, which I said to Veronica, but I think based upon the classroom, the way they come up with the need to create more classroom space, I think at least 3 of the classrooms would be aidable, because they were saying they didn't have our special ed programming. They said they will also allow you to do an extension or something for special ed programming.
Yeah, so
They didn't have that in our numbers.
So when does this become something that we know whether we're paying 58 cents to the dollar or dollar
Well, we
for
wouldn't
dollar.
go for a vote
Because-
until we knew that.
So,
Right, so I'm asking just in
We're
time
starting
tables
a
because
process, we were
So,
starting.
we
Yes.
keep saying to the community, it's such a great time to do a bond because, and that's a really big selling
Right.
point.
It is, but again, this is, as you go through the process and we go to the state and say we're considering this, they can, this is kind of part of the
So how
change
soon do
in
you
how they
see
work.
us getting that
So-
information so we can put it out?
So,
Correct
so,
information.
yeah, so I'll answer your question, but I just want to give a little
Yeah.
bit more information first. So with the previous administrator at SED, Carl Thurneau, he was much more relaxed in the whole process. So it's very rare that we would actually have to submit these forms ahead of actually having a bond
Yeah, this is
passed.
kind of a new
This is a
thing. That's
newer,
what, like,
a
I
much
was
newer
warned about the other
process.
day at this
So
meeting, yeah.
there, I actually have, although we got some timeframes through your project manager SAD, I don't feel like they're accurate based on experiences that we've had with other project managers. So I've actually already contacted, waiting to hear back from the director at SAD, Roseanne Gruff, just to see what is really a realistic timeframe. Because the reality is that it'll probably take, Megan and I about a week to put together the paperwork. We're going to hand some things off to Maureen that the district will need to sign off on. It's essentially like a preliminary submission. We're going to have to sit down with probably both of the school principals, just to make sure that we're very specifically identifying what each room is in each building. So, and one of the things that they look for is if it's a special education classroom, what's the ratio of students to instructors in those classrooms. So all of that gets noted on a floor plan. There's a couple of other forms to fill out, some summaries. So again, I think that what we need to do is going to take about a week, and then as quickly as you sign the forms, we'll make that submission to SED. So we could say within 2 weeks or so, we'd be making that submission to SED.
Yeah, because when we did the only one space that was off of their ratio was the fourth grade, which at the state level, they think 27 kids in a classroom.
Yeah.
Everything else was actually right in line with our numbers.
Absolutely, yeah.
So when we did when I did the calculation, I said to Veronica, but we only have this many sections, and we are kind of in line. But that will be something, like I said, which I said to Veronica, I get it, because they want to make sure, to other people's point, that the people aren't just doing building and the state's funding it and you really don't need it. So I think
Correct.
That's what we're looking at. But I think in the immediate, the cafeteria may now be a much more difficult thing to get approved, but I think at least, I think we had kind of also known that the price of it, even with aid, was very high.
Yeah.
But I think the 4 classrooms especially are something that I think we still need to look at, in light of also seeing the cost of renting the trailers and providing them. And I think Veronica can walk through, and we've talked about this a lot, where would they go? And that would take away space on our property. And more than likely, if we had them, we would probably, like a lot of districts, they put the specials outside, which makes the most sense, because we also have like security issues we'd have to deal with. Like, we lock down our building now, they're going to be off on and part by themselves with no security. So there's plenty of reasons that we still need to, we're hoping to push this through, right, Veronica?
Absolutely, of course. Yeah. So actually, if there any questions on the cost at this point? So we're going to go to the next slide then. So we reviewed the campus at Hillside, and as and other than the Burke, you really don't have a lot of property between these two sites. So we did, Megan and I did preliminarily with, Joe Marine preliminary talk about potentially something here, but really there's no space here on this property other than perhaps out, in the courtyard, which is really not ideal. And obviously you need the space over at Hillside. So we looked at a couple of different possibilities for trailers. And just to Megan, do you have a mouse can you just point to like where the entrance to the school is?
So here's the entrance.
Yep. Yep, and there's the traffic circle, and then the entrance down on Leffergy, and the ball fields are at the bottom of the screen. So where we were potentially proposing a building addition is over on the left-hand side, and Megan's going to point to that. That is, as you may remember, that is a sloped site already. So, and that's how we were taking advantage of essentially building into the hill. That would not work as a location for trailers. You're still going to have to build an entire permanent foundation under these trailers no matter where they go. SED does require that. We looked at some places on the side of the building next to the gymnasium, but again, you've got some bedrock over there, and we'd have to really remove trees and elevate them high enough above the bedrock and have potentially a taller ramp if we were going to do something like that. And again, I don't even know that they'd be wide enough to get in there. You'd probably have to crane them in. We did also look at the back playground area, and again, it's not even shown on this plan, but again, it's a brand-new playground space, and you would also have the cost, which is not included in the cost that I associated, with actually bringing a crane in and bringing it over the building and dropping them down in place, and you would lose the playground space as well. So really the only spot that we found where it may work would be adjacent to the playground in front of the basketball courts right off of the parking lot. And again, as Maureen mentioned, it would be ideal to put the specials type classrooms in there, because other than that, the kids are going to be going in and out of the building multiple times a day, whether lunch, the specials, PE, whatever it happens to be, just head down to the office. And it's considerably far away from the existing building. So typically with, yep.
As we said before, a lot of classrooms have been chopped up into offices.
Sure.
Could we move some of those offices out to the trailers as opposed to?
Yeah, you potentially could. We can certainly look at that, and that's something that we could look at.
Put the classrooms back.
And put the classrooms back in.
But they still work with children, because we're talking about our speech psychologists and that. I mean, and then you have the special ed students. I think the idea is, like, again, when we looked at it and just talking to some of the companies, not that it has to be anything, but a lot of people who have them, when we investigate, they'll do music outside because they feel it's more equitable. I mean, I would have a concern about bringing some of the special ed students, like, again, because they are servicing people.
Aren't trailers usually a temporary thing? I mean,
yes.
Isn't there a negative stigma with trailers?
Yeah, so, so.
That the community really, do you have pictures?
No, I don't have
I've
pictures
seen
of them.
They're actually not terrible inside. Outside, they're ugly. Inside, they're not. They're fine.
Yeah, so typically, portable classrooms or trailers are used temporarily. They're typically used during a construction or a renovation project, but oftentimes what happens is that the districts get used to having that space, and then they don't want to give it up. So either they continue to use it as the classroom space that they were using during that construction process, or they repurpose it and do something else with it in the future. And I think one of the ideas that Maureen had, which was a good idea, if you do choose to go down this route, is when in the future, if you didn't need them because this is just a temporary blip or whatever in enrollment, then you could potentially move them up to the Burke and use them for whether it's storage or some sort of athletic component or something like that. You wouldn't just get rid of
them. A lot of them, like, we would put them up there and we would use them for, like, either, like I said, sometimes the teams meet or something. I mean, if you wouldn't just get rid of them.
So yeah, and from the outside, they look.
I'll move up there.
So from the outside, they look like construction trailers. They have siding or T111 siding on it, and they're not very nice looking. And these literally would be at the front entrance to your building. The inside is very nice. They would be modern, beautiful, state-of-the-art classrooms. But again, they're.
How wide are they?
They're like 720 feet, right?
Oh, there we go.
Can you say that one more time?
25 feet wide by 70 feet deep, but the 70 feet is for 2 classrooms.
So essentially 25 by 30.
I will say, I'm not saying this is the right answer or the wrong answer, because we need to talk about it, but I lived in portable classrooms. I went to Ocean Township High School. We had 4 portables in the back, and they were great. And there was nobody cared. I mean, it was just, my art class was in, we called them the portables. You walked outside. We even had our junior high school, which was probably about a quarter-mile walk through the field. The junior high kids came to the portables. I mean, they were fine.
And
again, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but
was it an issue like in winter when people had to get their
I was
coats?
going to
No,
I was going to say, for
actually, I have to
elementary
tell you, it was very
students-
nice because we would walk and get fresh air and then be happy to be in
I have to
classroom.
say, for elementary students and being a teacher, having to dress and undress kids in and out of the building several times a day, that can be quite an interruption to regular
I
instruction.
think it would take a
Especially
long
the younger
time.
you get, you need more time to help with jackets, to help with hats, whatever it may be. That's going to eat up into your instructional time.
So you are required to provide a handicap-accessible walkway from the main building to the trailers, and it has to be covered as well. So there's some protection from the weather, but it's clearly you are walking outside. Yeah. And then the other issue is security. So you've gone through the effort of making the secure vestibules and having the main entrance be secure. This would be you'd have to discuss what the plan would be to make this space secure. Yeah, so that's a concern, whether is there an additional security person there, or however you would work that out. So those are just some logistical items that you would need to work out. Now, they do, no matter what, if you would choose to go with a portable classroom or a trailer, it still goes through the same SED process where you have to submit construction documents to SED. You go through the same building permit process with it. Other than they're much cheaper than traditional construction. The other upside of it is that it's a really short construction duration, because essentially you're constructing the foundation, the walkway, the covered walkway, a trailer or a crane or whatever comes and drops the trailers in place, and then you have the utility hookup. So it's a much shorter duration than when we were looking at potentially, building a traditional building on the building. So it's something that could happen much more quickly. So it's a difficult site in trying to find some space. I mean, and then the only option is, again, pulling them further out or maybe putting them in the parking lot, but I don't think you have the luxury of losing more parking spaces on this campus. So, any other questions in regards to the trailers?
Can you send over something?
Of course. Yeah.
You could also give them the link, right, Veronica?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
There was a link that, from the company that we were getting.
Yeah, I can definitely send pictures, and if you go,
inside, you can't tell the difference, just the outside.
you would not tell the difference on the inside. It looks like a regular classroom. Yeah.
Do they ever create covered walkways? Because I hear what you're.
You have to have a covered walk. It's a building code requirement to have a covered walkway.
Can it be covered in a way that, for the most, like, I hear what you're saying about the kids in the coats. Is there a way, that it's, again, it doesn't have to be heated, but just enough that the kids don't have to have every.
We can certainly design whatever, and it could be as enclosed as you want it to be. It adds to the cost. And then once you're enclosing something, you would need to provide ventilation in it as well. So now you're adding a mechanical system potentially to the to that walkway space as well.
Where would the walkway be, Veronica? You didn't.
Actually, Megan has it highlighted there.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Sorry.
It would be right in front of the playground.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And part of that is actually a ramp, because you can picture these are elevated, so.
So, Maureen,
Which would interfere
this
with
might be
access
more.
to the play. I'm sorry.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you want to? Because I was asking, in thinking about what's the best option, I know we have been talking about enrollment. Did we get any more information as to what we think our data trends are for the enrollment?
Yeah, I mean,
Actually,
I'll pass this out, and Lisa, it
Yeah,
shows
the
the
enrollment
way they figured it out, like what the
that
cohort.
document was hard to understand.
Yeah, no, but this gives you the step-by-step of how this relates to this, so I can pass these out.
Maureen, I
there.
think we should wait and go through their
No,
whole
that's-
presentation, and then.
But this is what you were looking
Can I ask
for.
one question just about layout here? So I guess just looking at this, I don't love the aesthetics of the trailers kind of spider webbing around the playground. Just stay on this theme of portable trailers. To Lisa's question of office space actually going in portable trailers. Would it be outlandish to move the playground to the, I don't know which direction that is, I guess, well, whatever.
North is up, so.
North is up, so then to the south. So you move the playground to the south, the basketball court, effectively just sort of reorient the playground and the basketball court. It doesn't seem like it's that much physical construction. Yes, playground space is, you'd have to take it down, pick it up, but it's not super expensive equipment anyway. Take those trailers and slide them in, and just kind of orient along the theme of this portable trailers, which I'm not endorsing, I'm just for the purposes of this slide. Sort of tidy everything up. The trailers come in, they're closer to the school, they're office space, the playground comes down, the basketball court comes down, and it's just all looks like it has some plan to it, as opposed to some spider
Dropping it where there's some space,
spider web trailers that are wrapping around with an overhang and a walkway.
We can certainly look at that, and what we could do is, whether it's for the next meeting. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's just woods.
Joni, I don't think she's going to do it. It's a woods. And you think you'd have to go into the woods to do it?
Well, I would think that well, it depends on, I don't think you can lose your baseball, I'm assuming that you
Well, I
can't
think
lose the baseball
there's
field.
some outfield, there's like some field, like you wouldn't want to infringe.
Behind the dugout of the softball field, they're just woods. It's just the walkway down to the pool.
Yeah.
And then at the back end of the basketball court, it's just woods, mud,
Yes.
stones, etc. So if you just took the basketball court and you shifted it to the south,
Yeah, but we would have to, you're saying we have to go into the woods there, though?
yeah, like it's kind of like to
Or
the
you're saying
slightly
going
to
to the hill. The one thing is that down over there, you're getting close to the wetlands.
Wetlands, I was going to say, yeah.
And so then it's hard, so I walked the site today, it's
Yeah.
really wet there, so
Yeah.
the further you move it down,
Yeah.
then the basketball court will be, it could potentially get water on top of it.
And also not necessarily being able to construct where the wetlands are, so.
And there is also, I mean, there's a significant cost in moving even all of that. I mean, installing playground equipment is as expensive as almost the purchase of it.
Yes.
It's almost doubles the cost, like it's
All
about.
right, it's a question.
But we
Probably
can,
about
but we can
70,000
certainly,
to relocate
we can put
it.
an analysis, we can,
we could, but
we can
there
show
will-
it, and we can get some
Right.
pricing for it and talk with some of the playground,
And that
like Playground
basketball
Medic.
court too also has, what are those called, chargers, and you know what I'm talking about, right, Veronica? When you put down a certain amount of asphalt, like there is drainage that's built.
Oh,
into
yeah,
that.
yeah, 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 of course.
That court, even just to relocate it, that could be like $80,000. So I mean,
Well, I
there is
think Tim
another.
is just raising the question.
No, I know, but I'm just saying,
to
as we're
look at
talking
it,
about
is there
money, I'm
any
just
other
also.
configuration?
There's a lot of things you can do, I'm just saying, but again, he just mentioned it's not expensive, I'm just saying it probably would be close between the two to like 150,000 to like move the basketball, that's all, in terms of money, because we did that work not too long ago. And when you put down asphalt, you have to have a certain amount of drainage put underneath it, so.
Sure, I think one of the next steps might be is, to sit down, meet with the principals in order to make sure that we have properly identified every single space within the two buildings, but focus on Hillside first, and submit that information to SED so that we can have them do the preliminary analysis, because they may come back and say, hey, you know what, you're going to be okay, and you can get aid on at least the classrooms. And then perhaps when they further look at the cafeteria, maybe there's an opportunity for them to really see how unrealistic it is to add an addition or
Well, she
try to
was
carve out
suggesting
space for
even
the kitchen.
that where we looked at that space
Yeah,
even behind the existing
the
cafe. And
garden is,
I think she was just, in fairness, they're looking at it without having the full facilities needs assessment done. So she was doing it based upon our enrollment times, a number of square feet, and then looking, but even, I acknowledge, I said, if we wanted to have a functioning kitchen, it would not exist. But like with Veronica said, we can certainly look to like, if we were just to open up and recapture a lot of spaces, we may be able to do it. And then, I think, look at the four classrooms.
Yeah, and I think, and even, Maureen and I were talking today, maybe there's an opportunity to carve out some space within the building for a kitchen.
Right.
And then the existing cafeteria remains the existing cafeteria, and
Yes.
somehow squeezing a kitchen in there, maybe
But we
in the
talked about,
hallway.
we'll meet with Amy, because part of the question, they were asking, what does the small gym function as? And I said to Veronica, I think they do use it, but if we could in fact, like somehow get, take some
little bit
space
space,
behind it, so we would have to do that analysis for the state to even consider it. So even to look at the office space, Lisa, we'll have to do that just as part of
And
something we have
that's
to
a great
submit to
idea.
the state anyway. Because the state will kind of ask the same questions, but, why do we have all the office space? But I guess, as we talked to Amy, and Amy has a good idea of where would that go, and then work with Veronica.
Yes.
Maureen, how many classrooms were taken, repurposed as office space?
I think they were split. I mean, Amy can talk better to that, but a lot of the rooms, a lot of what we did was, there was always that AIS suite anyway, and you just kind of carved out more spaces. I didn't think.
Or the space off the library
Yeah.
was.
But that's a learning lab for students.
Yep, so when I arrived at Hillside, the two classrooms or the two learning spaces that were a part of the library were there already. One space was a conference room and the other space was an office. So we've changed those both into learning spaces now. We have our learning lab 1, 2, and 1, and our resource room in the other. So those are learning spaces. The only classroom that is organized as offices is our
Amy,
speech
if
suite.
you're going to, you just come up to the mic so the people at home can see, can hear you. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. The only classroom that is organized as offices is our speech suite. That was initially 2 offices, and we built a 3rd office in it. So 2 have a window and 1 doesn't. There's another classroom that is a psychologist, an office for our special education administrative assistant, and our PTOT suite. So that's also all in one classroom space as well. And those are both on our first floor in our intermediate wing.
That means there were two classrooms that could.
So those 2 spaces could go back to classroom if we were to find other spaces for those offices.
Because this is where I keep getting stuck, and we're not selecting what we're doing yet.
No,
right?
we're kind of talking through all things.
But I get stuck. I know this year we're short 1 classroom. And we had to remove our Spanish person, and now she does push in. So we're shy 1 classroom. And then I look at these numbers for an addition of millions of dollars, and again, I look at our housing prices, and I just keep coming back to 1 classroom. It just seems, to me, it seems premature to do this, especially if we have, I don't know, it sounds like we may have other options. It's a lot of money
Yeah.
It's a lot of money in a town that's losing our deductibility for taxes and had reassessments. It concerns me.
But I would say, I would agree with you, it's one class this year, and any time you're doing facilities planning, we're trying to look, and to the union, actually, and Amy can speak to that, having some conversations with the union. This was initially, discussed as we were needing spaces, and they said, what are you doing? Because technically it's almost 2 classrooms, because we took a music classroom away last year, so the space they're using, although meaning the other 2 music teachers that come up from this building are now, they did lose a classroom space, so, it's working, it's not ideal, and it's not exactly perfect for them or even ideal, but they're making it work. So technically, we're down 2 classrooms, but next year we know, according to the special ed department, that we are going to have another communications class coming back to Hillside based upon, I guess, children they know that are in the either
range.
CPSC, and like they know that we're going to need a K1-2, right, and a 3 to 5.
It's only a 3-year span.
3-year span. So we
legally,
need
they can only
another,
have 36
we've
months.
had previously 2 communications classes, from what I've been at
2 years
least
ago.
informed, that next year we will in fact have 2 again. So we will be down, we will need another classroom next year. And as some of the board, just again, we're not doing construction next year anyway, but as we can see by our 3rd grade numbers, if that in fact, I don't want to push it, but if that in fact turns to 7 sections next year, you're at 141 today in that section. If you gained another 5 students, the board may consider, you may not want to have 26 kids in a 4th grade class. If you need another classroom, we'd be down 3 classrooms.
I just keep looking at it like this. Our 3rd and 4th have a lot of kids, and they're going to be aging out and going to Ferry, because this thing is not going to be ready for 5 more years.
Right.
We're not going to have kids in that classroom. Anybody in Hillside now is not going to have the benefit of this. And again, I look at our real estate prices, and I think families are coming in having fewer children. Our K and 1 are 2 of our smallest classes in our K through 12 spectrum. So I'm trying to see what's coming in. I know you sent this study that I didn't understand, and I don't know if it's compared to national birth rates or West.
No, it's actually our own birth rates. It's the birth rates of the town. It's actually from the Department of Health.
If I could get an explanation, that would help. But that's my hesitation, is I see 2 grades that are not that big in K1. I see older grades departing, and I see high housing prices. And unlike the families that moved here when I was here, where often it was a one partner was the earner, most part now, 2 partners are the earners, and those families tend to have fewer children.
Right, but I will tell you, Lisa, based upon it, again, this is from the Department of Health for Hastings, parents, people who have had live births in this district. In the upcoming 2020, 21 and 22, based upon live births, they were the highest that they've been for like 12 years here. So again, for whatever.
People moving in, I don't know, I'm sorry.
I don't know if, I don't know what, if people haven't, I don't know what to read into that, other than when people do these type of studies, they do use that as a basis for like deciding what that kindergarten cohort's going to be 6 years later.
So here's my dumb question. When you say the live birth rate, does that mean I'm somebody who lives here and I'm having my baby here in Hastings? Or I'm somebody who moves here with my 7-year-old?
No, it means you had a child living here. 10706.
So this report is
census
having
information,
babies here, but not who's moving in.
No, that just includes the live births of that year, and then they do a calculation based upon like housing sales and things like, because obviously they have to account up, and then they kind of look at over a 10-year period, like the live births compared to what you actually ended up with in kindergarten, and they apply like a percentage increase to what your live births. So if we've had some years our live births were 44 and we had 125 kids. So we had 1 year, I don't have that census there, but in like 20, and I think this number is too high, so I wouldn't say that this is what it's going to be, but based upon, again, the math behind it, 2022, based upon this very high live birth of 2016, we should have 165 incoming kindergartners because we had like 80, but that was
year?
No, in 2020. Again, but I would pull that number down, but
4 years.
Interestingly, the last few upcoming kindergarten classes, those families have had babies while they're living here much higher than we've seen in over 10 years. So I don't know if it's just they all had kids in 2000s. I don't know what to account for that, but people do use that as a planning way. It's not, and again, this is something the state would accept because it's based upon our own census information.
Right.
It's based upon people who live in this community. So none of us have a crystal ball. They could all move. I don't know. But I think as we're looking, we're certainly just looking, and I would agree with you, unfortunately, next year we won't have this in place, but I think if it continues on with special ed programming, even if we were to stay consistent with the 6 sections across the board, you know, we would like, ideally, I think the flex classroom isn't probably ideal the way it's being pushed in now. It's kind of hurting different programs. So it's just something I think we need to consider.
Our concern is the special areas. So we've met with the special area teachers just about the impact of sharing learning spaces, and there are significant impacts to their programs. One of the things that was brought up by our art teacher is the fact that he stores all of the materials, not only for the projects, but also the student work, and it's across the entire school. So 629 students' work, whether it's painting, whether it's drawing, whether it's sculpture, is all stored in his learning space. So if we had to put him on the road...
Stored
in his learning space.
His classroom.
So if we had to put him on the road, we'd have to find space for that. In addition, our music program, they use a lot of instruments in the classroom. They wouldn't be able to bring 10 xylophones into another learning space. So it would impact our programs. So that's just something to consider.
And I think, you know, even this year, with our reading instruction program, we were using some of those shared spaces, and it's not even, we don't even have some of that, we've had to bump out people out of reading instruction, right, Amy? The way
Right,
it's
so one of the
structured?
challenges that we had this year is we moved our reading instruction to first thing in the morning for our special education learners that had it on their IEPs, and we've lowered the number of teacher-student ratio, but in order to do this, we needed learning spaces for all of our kids, and we tried to use our special area rooms, but some of the special area rooms were really not conducive for learning because the teachers were doing their prep work in order to get ready for their classes, and it was super exciting to see paints being mixed, and then as a result, the students weren't able to focus on the learning, so we've had to combine kids in other learning spaces to make it work. So those are just some of the challenges that we're having in regard to space.
I mean, Amy, if we were to combine, like, I know that the two classrooms are identified, where would that, I mean, I obviously work with Veronica, but do you have a space where you could then give speech and language and OT and PT, like, because they are offices, but they're offices, they're working with kids all day, aren't they?
Right, there's no other space. We took a supply closet that was used for Aspire, one of our after-school programs, and we turned that into an office this year. So that is, we've walked...
Where do they store their things now?
So we've been working on that. So we have a couple of closets in the hallway that's between the small gym and the small gym and the cafe. So right now they have closets in there. George also set up an area outside for some of the balls and equipment like that. And we've spoken with Joe and the Buildings and Grounds team. So what they're going to do is we have been working with Nick to try to get a refrigerator for the milk that's vertical instead of horizontal. We're looking literally at like ceiling space. And when we can get a vertical refrigerator, that will give us a little bit more width, and then we're going to build 2 closets there so that we have height to be able to store more games and so on, but we're just really tight on space, so those are some of the challenges that we're trying to work out.
And that closet that was repurposed as an office, are children working in that office?
Yeah, so it's 2 district psychologists in that office, and that's where they do testing.
So the classroom additions, it was 4 classroom additions, correct?
That's correct.
And could you do it as 2, or were they on top of each other? Is that
Yeah, so actually, if we go to the next plan, so this was the overall addition, and so this was on the first, essentially, this would be a continuation of the first floor, the same floor that the cafeteria and offices and everything else is on. So this would be 2 classrooms, the elevator, bathrooms, small bathroom, individual use bathrooms in each one of those classrooms, as well as the cafeteria, a stage potentially, and then the kitchen, and the kitchen would be actually a classroom that's repurposed into a kitchen, because that's really an ideal space for it. And then a stair at all the way on the left-hand side, which would give you access to the lower level. In terms of, and then the next, so that's the bigger scheme, and then the next slide would be what that lower level would look like. And again, it's just a continuation of the corridor and those classrooms to adding the 2 more classrooms on. So if you were to only put a 2 classroom addition on, I suspect what you would do is you would flip it to the other side. If you go back to the other, you'd essentially put it right at the front, that you just add the 2 classrooms on right at the front of the cafeteria, like right to the bottom below the corridor. Yeah, because you'd want to build them up at the right grade, because the hill starts to slope down at that point. Wouldn't be a great use of space. And then
would that be half the cost of 4, or does it?
Oh, he's saying just to do 2 classes.
Oh yeah, it would be about half. You'd still have the elevator, so maybe it's, I can look at the numbers, but it would be
It wouldn't be purely half.
it wouldn't be
The
half, probably be more like
elevator's about
60% or something like that, or whatever. But I'll do is I'll calculate that and I'll send that over to Mama.
Just because down one right now.
Well, I think,
maybe two.
well, I think part of the four, and we've talked about, like, even when we did the trailers, we priced them in twos, but I think in terms of when, I think because you already have the cost of doing the elevator in the building, and that's gonna cost you $500,000, so if you're gonna do a construction, I don't think it would be like purely half, Veronica, am I right?
It would not be.
It would
You'd
be like
see
maybe
more.
like 30% less, or 20, so then you
Yeah,
start
that's
saying, if
correct.
you're gonna do it, you would do it to build, like, right now, we know we're 2 short, 3 short, so you probably would build
Well, yeah,
4.
if you're too short and you're losing one.
So I think 4 was like probably more than what we need, but we see us as 2.
Wait,
saying that we.
so how many classrooms are we short right now?
Well, right now, this year, in my mind,
We're
we
one.
could say we're 2 short, because last year we lost a music classroom that John Carini and Mike Rubino used to teach instrumental. Currently, they're in a room that I can tell you that I personally, when they see me in the building, they always express that they're unhappy with, and there was even a question about dropping the instrumental music because they felt like the space wasn't conducive, right? I mean, there was some discussion around that amongst other things last year. So right now, they're in a very small space that they're kind of making work for this year. Fless is on the road, right? Next year, we know for sure that well, from what I'm being told, I shouldn't say for sure, that they're going to need a classroom for the communications. So in my mind, we're at least 2, if not, if you consider the music, 3 classrooms down.
But wait, what's the size of our 4th grade that's departing?
Our 4th grade that is departing is, let me see, this is 126, and we anticipate next year, based upon this enrollment projection, 123 kindergartners.
Just based on the enrollment projection? Okay.
Correct.
So that's 6 classes, right, Maureen?
Yes.
And we have 6 3rd grade classes.
Yes, right now,
So
it
shouldn't
doesn't
we
even
be-
account for, I don't think right now with the space, Nanisha, right now, you wouldn't even be able to break that 4th grade class next year. I mean, you could, but then we could either we would have to take a music classroom away. We'd have to do something else. If next year, to say for whatever, that 4th grade class is 141, the current 3rd grade is 141. For Bed's Day, it'll be 141. So if we've been trending where we're gaining 5 to 10 kids between 3rd and 4th grade the last 3 years, I don't know why, but if, right now, we could be looking at 147 kids in that 4th grade class next year. So it would put you at 6 sections at like 25 or 26, right? Something like that.
And Jeremy, to answer your question in regards to the, 2 classrooms being half the price of 4 classrooms, if you think about it in terms of it's actually more effective. It is more effective to build the 4 because you still have the same foundation around it, because the 2 classrooms are stacked on top of each other. You still have that corridor that you have to add. You still have the elevator. So there are things that you'd have to add no matter what. So, I mean, Maureen's correct that it's not going to be a split right down the middle where it's half the cost. And my concern with only 2 classrooms is that I wouldn't recommend putting them where the 2 classrooms are shown. Actually, let me take it back. Potentially, if you put them where the 2 classrooms are shown now, you would put them down at that lower level. And that would probably be the most economical way to do it. So there'd be 2 classrooms in line with the lower level. You'd still have to get an elevator down there in order to make them handicap accessible. So.
Could you build on the back playground where it's flat?
Sure.
Or is there not?
Yeah, I mean, just it's a matter of how much playground space potentially the district is willing to use.
The number of students that we have outside. So if you were to build, then that really doesn't become a playground that the whole grade could be on at the same time.
Yeah. And ideally, I will say that in terms of logistics and during the construction process, this is a great location. You really could just fence it off, and the construction could take place during the school year with, I'll say, minimal disruption. There's always going to be some noise during construction, where if you were building on the back playground, that really is going to disrupt the education process more. There's going to be trucks driving back there on a regular basis down that driveway, so that would make it more difficult, as well as you lose access to the playground during the construction phase. So.
Question for Amy. I don't know if I heard you right. Does a grade split between the front and back playground when they have recess?
We don't. We had talked about doing that, but families felt that it was important for all their kids to be together.
So
they
currently
don't
you'll
split.
have 1 grade on the front or 1. I just wanted to follow up on what you were saying. So if we lost a playground but maybe staggered lunchtimes, you could still have a grade at a time on a playground. Is that correct?
Right. So what I believe Jeremy was saying, though, is if we took some of the space away from the playground, the back playground, and the challenge of that would be that we wouldn't be able to fit a whole grade back there, so then it would become a space that we couldn't use.
So all the children would play in the front then?
Correct.
That would be the outcome?
Yeah.
Okay.
So could we look into maybe extending the back playground if Jeremy's idea of adding the classrooms to the back so that we do have ample space for a whole grade to play on?
We can definitely look at that. Megan, we don't have a site survey, so we don't know the property line.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would throw out, could the portable
That's gotta get in
classrooms
the
also
marsh
be
pretty
located on the
fast
back
back
playground?
there,
Yeah.
They could. It just logistically, just a little bit more difficult in terms of craning them in, but yeah, it's absolutely possible.
Maybe we should look at, if you're looking.
And again, losing playground space for that, but.
The one thing I just want to mention,
not
I mean, we're
ideal.
having a lot of conversations about space and numbers, but what I also hear is there's a qualitative thing happening as well about the qualitative experience of education, music, FLES, potentially art. I mean, I want to make sure as we're looking at numbers, we're also looking at qualitatively. And the thing I can't judge and I don't know is where have we made concessions year over year over year that actually, when we critically reflect on those concessions, there's an educative experience we're trying to create that we haven't been able to, but we've gotten used to saying, well, it's okay to make this sacrifice or that sacrifice for so long. And I just want to make sure.
Take a step back a few years.
You take a step back a few years, it's like, I don't know who discovered water, but I'm sure it wasn't a fish. You don't know what you're swimming in after a while. And when you get down to it, I want to make sure that this doesn't just become a numbers conversation, it's a qualitative, educative conversation as well. And I think that's just critically important because I just see this going down a constant numbers path. Critically important numbers, obviously, but I just want to make sure it's a balanced conversation.
And I think that's why even Amy, because I think when she talked about the programming and things that could be possible, like the spaces, when you add space, you get a lot of value.
Yeah, and I guess,
like the reconfiguration of other spaces.
Along those lines, I'm having trouble, I think, visualizing the need. And I think it's because it's strictly a question of dollars and then layouts and diagrams. I don't have a context of this is how many academic classrooms we have. This is what we need in terms of specials classes. This is a specific number of need in terms of offices, and essentially like an index of need, where I'm not looking at it in a spatial layout because it's too broad for me to really respond to in a detailed way and say, what about this, what about this, what about this, to really basically break the elementary education experience to its individual line items. And even to know, frankly, not that we're ever trying to be a neighbor or anyone else, but what's the norm? So these are the line items, this is the number of classrooms we need, this is the gym space that we need, these types of things, and then what's the norm? Or what's the ideal, or but just some benchmark against it. So I don't
Sure,
I don't
we
know.
can certainly put together a list for you. We have a floor plan, which Maureen, I don't know if you have that, but.
Yeah, I actually had it with me in one of these.
Oh, you have it as well. The other thing that I just wanted to share, because it has buzzed in the building, is the idea that because space is tight, that the stage should be reorganized as classroom space. And I just want to put that out there to the board because, as you know, HEF has been very supportive in our revitalizing the stage to be able to make it a space for students to use for productions and for assemblies and so on. We actually had our first assembly just this past week, and we had our new HEF screen and our new HEF projector, and it really had a huge impact on the entire community. So the idea of losing that space, I think, would be unfortunate, but that is something else that has been discussed.
You know, it'd be helpful to follow up on what Tim said, is I know you have 3 large spaces. There's the cafe, there's the little gym, which is not a little gym, and the all-purpose room. If we could have a sense as a board on how those 3 spaces are used
Sure.
and how frequently they're used, I think that would be helpful.
So our gym spaces, our all-purpose room and our small gym are used by our PE classes. So there are 2 classes that take place at the same time in our all-purpose room, and then there's 1 class that takes place in our small gym. So those are used 5 periods a day. Our PE teachers and our art, all of our PE teachers teach 5 periods a day. So those spaces are used for that. When we have a special assembly, we try to schedule it in the small gym or the all-purpose room, but we try to schedule it at off times so it doesn't impact the instructional time. There was one more question that you asked.
The cafe.
And the cafe is scheduled from 8 o'clock until 9:30 for Mr. Rubino for music lessons. So every day he has music in there until 9:30. Then our students come in for lunch beginning at 11 and ending at about 1 o'clock? At 1 o'clock, and then our custodians go in to clean up. In addition, the cafe is also used for some special programming like senior sewing. So we schedule our seniors to work with our students in the cafe, and that's 1 day a week. So that's generally how our cafe space is used.
Thank you.
And actually, Tim, exactly what you're asking for is one of the things that SED is asking for as well. So we'll be compiling that all information and working with the district in order to put that all
Great.
together anyway, because they want to review that to see really what the eligible aid might be.
That would be great.
But I can say, I mean, I had sent the floor plans to you.
Yep, I have the
So
floor plans,
I
yes.
can share those with
We're
everyone.
going to essentially put it into like a table.
How it's currently, like, existing, you can see where everybody is
Mm-hmm.
and how it's currently used.
Yeah, but I guess in addition to floor plan, because floor plan sort of requires that spatial understanding as well, as much as just, we have this many kids, we have this many classrooms, we have this many specials rooms, we have this many,
Well, one thing I would say to Amy, and again, I'm not trying to push one way or the other, but I would say that some of the spaces that were created this year, like for the learning lab, I was kind of like, do we have any better spaces? Because some of these rooms, I would say, and unfortunately, I mean, unless we're missing something, we're really tight on space, because even those, I don't know if anyone is really familiar, you may be, Nanisha, with the spaces off of the library, right? They were kind of like what I would call
Smaller space.
they're like used as classroom spaces now, so.
Oh, yeah,
it's-
they look beautiful now.
No,
but
I know, but
still
they're small. They're
Yeah.
small. I mean, I think that they're not, like, I mean, to me,
Yes.
to kind of Doug's point about, like, some of the spaces we have are not ideal.
Not ideal learning spaces. One of the things that John and I did with Joe was we walked the school, and any nook and cranny, we literally counted the ceiling tiles, and he did his mathematical formula to figure out how many bodies could be in the space. And then once we figured that out, that's how we were able to assign the locations. So, for example, the resource room has a maximum number of students plus one teacher. So we were able to say, okay, this space is possible for, the resource room, this space is possible for the resource room. It's small, but it gets its job done, and it's legal. In the same way, the learning lab is also a smaller space. It was our conference room, but we reorganized it into our learning lab. So there are some spaces that are small spaces.
Have we thought about any use of the cafeteria, of the cafe when it's not being used for any of those things? That maybe some things that are sort of cramped can go in there? Because from 1 to 3, or maybe from 9:30 to 11, can we talk about maybe what's the thought process behind what can go there?
Sure. The challenge that we have with the cafe is the lack of consistency. So because we have senior sewing every Thursday, that definitely impacts the ability for a class to be scheduled in there. In the same way, our custodial staff cleans the cafe after all the lunch periods, so that takes them until about 1:45, and then there's really only an hour, because we had looked at FLES. That was the period that we had thought, oh, well, maybe she can use the cafe for a number of her classes, but that just didn't work out because of the inconsistency.
Amy, I was wondering if you could talk on two things. One is about our current use of the library and the setup of the library, because the renovation that includes the cafeteria would include repurposing that space. So if you could talk a bit about the library programming as it exists now and how the space is not meeting those needs. And then also if you could talk about the cafe and how many students or classes are able to use it at a time, and maybe so we could compare the use of space if we had a cafeteria, how that could change programming if more kids were able to have a lunch period at the same time.
Sure. So starting with the cafe, our grades eat lunch all together. So all 6 classes go into the cafe at the same time. So generally our grades are somewhere between 120 and 140. So first grade has lunch all together, second grade has lunch all together, and so on. So that's how the cafe is utilized. In regard to our library, we've really grown our library program. This year, our kindergarten and first graders are scheduled for library, whereas our second, third, and fourth graders have what we call collaborative library. So instead of library being a prep period for them, we have our librarian working in collaboration with our teachers. So our teachers sign up for blocks of time in our library with our librarian to work on special projects. So this gives our teachers and our students the opportunity to be in library for an hour and a half one day, researching and writing, or the opportunity to be in our library for 3 or 4 days in a row. So one grade might spend more time in the library for a 2-week period, and then another grade might spend more time in the library. But our library is also used for book checkout, so all classes are scheduled for a book checkout time. So there are students in and out of the library all day, and then of course we also use our library for reading instruction. So first thing in the morning, we have a number of groups in our library. We have like little nooks in the library, so we use those nooks to be able to provide reading instruction for our kids. One of the things in our library that is not optimal is there's like a leveled area of seating, and our librarian doesn't feel that that area is optimal. She would love to kind of knock it out and put more bookshelves in, because we are very lucky in Hastings to be overflowing with books. So that's a wonderful problem that we have. So she would like to see more bookshelves put in there. And of course we would love to be able to have the opportunity to really design a 21st century library. So if we were to move forward with any of the construction projects, the idea would be to really sit together and think about what the possibilities are for a library, think about what would a collaborative library really look like, with special reading spots for kids, with tables that might move up and down, but really to give students the opportunity to kind of create a space that works for them for many different ways.
Well, I think was Lauren, were you referring to, because part of, if we were to do an addition that included a cafeteria, that would allow the current cafe then to become a library. And I know the space is, because I think today it's like 1,000 square feet larger than our existing.
Yep. So one of the things that we talked about, we also liked the idea of the location. So in a perfect land, if the cafe turned into the library, it's got a beautiful atrium. As I understand it, there used to be a special hallway through there where kids would read, because there's the skylight, there's a lot of windows in there, and it's also very centrally located in the school where it's open on all sides. Yeah. So we thought that that would be a really beautiful location for the library to be a real central hub of the school. And then we talked about the idea that the current library could be reorganized into a music suite. So that way music could be together with our band and our orchestra room for practice, so that everybody could be together.
And we felt comfortable in terms of the construction costs, where our in-house construction, we would be able to handle, like take over, like if that space became available. Like, it's just some money in the bond, Veronica, for some of the work, but the majority of it's just in-house construction. We felt we could handle.
I think all of it is,
right? And this one, okay, because we moved some of the money around, right?
It was all moved out of the bond, and it was work that Joe would handle.
Question. If assuming these projections are accurate, I know that's a big if.
No, it is a big if, I mean.
Are we anticipating space issues at Farragut Middle School?
Yes, I think both would hold true, because I was saying that obviously, to your point, like it eventually it'll be the same problem down here. So that's why when we do this facilities needs assessment, when we're sending it to the state, we're also going, because I said to Veronica, we may as well like start getting it together for the middle school also, because we have to prove to them we're also going to have the same space issues that we think may be happening at Hillside, especially with that incoming, that third grade that's sitting there right now. By the time it gets to fifth grade, I can tell you right now that hallway, they have other classrooms that they'll have to be moved if we need additional sections of fifth grade. So yes, to your point, we are also looking at that as far as the auditorium renovation. We're thinking
because
along the same lines.
Classroom space.
No, we're kind of like both arguments are on both, I would say. And that's what we have to kind of show to the state, that we're looking at, again, the information that's provided to us. Programming, we look at it as, some enrollment driven, some special ed programming driven, which we have to submit to the state, because they're also interested. They want to see schools build capacity. I mean, she had said that if you have something that shows our floor plan, she wasn't clear on what was special ed programming.
We have to identify the special ed
We have to
spaces,
kind of explain to that, because that is something that will potentially make things allowable aid-wise, because that is something they consider.
Just to follow up,
special ed programming. So the ratio that they're doing is based upon just like gen ed enrollment. But if a school, say, had different types of special education programs in them, then they would then consider those classroom spaces to be additionally allowed. Like, you can have more classrooms, and then we could potentially then have everything aidable under that scenario.
Maureen, we've had the other communications class, then we took it away because we didn't have students. Now it's coming back. So in thinking of long term, it's going to be an issue next year. But what are the chances that in 2 years now that program's going to have to go away again? I love the program. I think it's amazing, but we're talking about space issue, it's a space issue for next year, and I guess
But I think
possibly
also,
2
I know
years.
the board
but-
has talked about, asking, I think at the last special ed presentation, I've heard people here discuss that we would like to think about building, right, capacity.
Right, no, I'm usually
all
on the
over. I mean,
side,
not only in Hillside, but I mean, middle school and high school. So I think if we're asking, if that is something we're thinking about, then you have to have space for it.
I think we are and we aren't. The board has pushed it, but we haven't heard positive responses from our special ed department. We've heard they're overwhelmed. We've heard that they don't want to take it on until everything's brought up to speed. I found that answer frustrating, but that's what I hear. So if we're going to talk about special ed increasing, which I think we should, as I always say, it's better for our kids and it's better for our budget. We will make money by charging tuition, and we'll treat our kids as best as possible by keeping them here, but I keep getting pushback. So I guess the question is that something we see, say, happening, right now we have it on and off at Hillside. Is that something we see growing at Farragut? Not in the next 5 years. I don't know.
I'm trying to think how long the communications classroom, this is either the second year where they didn't have the K-1, 2, Amy, but I mean, up until, they had it for 8 years pretty consistently. So I think even, right, I mean, I think it's more likely that we would have this need.
Is that
I
what
don't
we're
wanna-
saying? Is that what we're expecting?
I mean,
that
it was almost like, even when Laura last year, this year we thought we may need it, and then I don't know what the change was, but they're just based upon the number of kids, she was like, definitely next year, but there was a potential for that. Am I wrong
Right,
in
so
that?
my understanding, it has to do with students in our district. So if the students are in our district, she would open up the class and then invite students from other districts. But because the age range is 36 months, if the students that we have in our district are within 36 months, she kind of changes the age range. So last year it was a K-2, this year it's a 1-3. So she just has to stay within the 36 months.
But what I'm saying, I mean, based upon the fact, out of 8 years that because this started under Debbie Orr, I mean, these programs were
Right, I
there
think it was
prior to Laura.
K2 and then
I want to say they've been in the
3,
district
4.
at least, because we used to have a summer school program we ran for at least 4 years. But again, that's something, that's another whole topic, but that's something you do have to watch, because
2 years
that can
ago-
actually cost the district. But the,
There was a K-2 and a 3-5 2 years ago.
but I think it was probably for at least 7, because I know we billed out tuition for 7 or 8 years. So the last 2 we haven't had it, but the 6 previous we did. So
And
I would
in
say
terms
based
of the
upon-
numbers, are we thinking that we're going to
well, I think
continue?
we're
I don't know.
keeping it because Irvington, we have a continuation of a program with Irvington, right? I mean, we have the
Right.
K-5 and they have
the middle school.
The middle school
Yeah.
program. So we're all in this consortium. I think they're committed to keeping that program here. And again, like Amy said, we just didn't have
The
numbers, but we could have actually still run it and taken outside kids if we would have gotten enough. But again, we have to be mindful, we can't run programs that will cost us money if it's only out-of-district students. So
I think this gets to the heart of, it gets to the heart of strategic planning, it gets to the heart of decision-making, and, these are long-term decisions that have to get made. I think we're talking around them right now. I think there's people, pointing fingers, who made this decision, who made that decision. This is a complex set of decisions that we have to make as a district as it pertains to, do we want to take on the time, energy, cost to build up a certain expertise that we then turn into something where we're going and we're recruiting, and there's a fair amount of questions that are behind this, and I think when it comes down to what are we talking about here, space issues, I think that one of the reasons we're struggling in this conversation is because we aren't all aligned yet on strategically some of the things we're trying to create, and I feel like we're talking around a little bit of that. I think we've gotten some great data tonight and some pictures of what are the general spaces used for, what are some of the challenges in some of the special spaces. We're starting to see that. I think what would be valuable for the board is to actually see a proposal of a projected what from a space and how much is needed to a programmatic perspective, just whether we may look at it and go, I disagree. I see that programmatically, but I don't agree with it. But I feel like we're getting it in drips right now a little bit, and I think we need something more systemic, that says, this is what we'd love, and we go, not going to get it, or love it too, let's do it, or something in between that. And I think we're working our way there.
We're providing what we see as enrollment numbers. We know what they are. There are some challenges we're presenting. I think there is.
But that's only one part of it.
No, there
the
is one
enrollment-
part of it, and I think that's why Amy was here tonight, just to talk about from a space standpoint, although we have some spaces, it's still not, to your point, ideal. Like, I would personally think some of the spaces that we've created in the Learning Lab, they're not ideal learning spaces, and if you had a new building, you could also create better learning spaces for our special ed programming and things that, even like when we did the reconstruction here, when you create space, you can realign it and use it better. Like the fact of the,
Right.
current library, by doing this extension, not only do you create potentially
But
needed
it
space
goes
for
back to-
enrollment.
It goes back to this idea of there's two different things here. There's the objectives, and then there's the space. And I think that those two can get conflated in a conversation. This objective means we need this space. There's a set of objectives where you do some amazing progressive stuff, and you don't have to change the space at all.
Right,
and
but I
then
think you
there's-
also have an enrollment
I
issue
get it,
with
but
with
what
the
I'm saying-
class sizes.
all I'm saying
too.
is there's a conflating of what we're trying to create and a space conversation. I mean, I think that, for example, Lisa's making some really good points, for example, about do we need the space? I mean, I've heard Lisa talk about, for example, my kids were in the school, the enrollment didn't sound that different, and there was a feeling of some really great things were happening. I think different programs have come about that weren't there, 15, 18 years ago. We've made an assumption that those are really important programs. Do we still believe? I just think that there's a variety of considerations that things have evolved over time. We've got FLES. I'm imagining that the music program has grown. Maybe not. I don't know.
It's really the special education classrooms, because when my kids were there, the communications classes were not there.
For 20 years.
Those two classes were
So
not there,
special
nor
ed
FLES.
and-
Those
yeah.
three classrooms are new.
yeah.
And it's also enrollment, like I've said it before, when my kids went through Hillside, they had 25 kids in a classroom. In a lot of cases, now that's not the case. So you do have decisions that, from what I've heard here, that there's a certain expectation on class sizes. There's a certain amount of space in the building. We know what our enrollment is. You have special education programming you didn't have a few years ago. So I think as we're walking through it, I think we've presented, as we look at it, we're just concerned about the space. And certainly there is a big cost to it, and we're trying to show you, we've given you the options, like you could rent, you could build, or you
And
can,
that's what I
or
think we
change
have
some
to
of your
put forward.
programming.
We
But
just have to put forth the levers to the public. One lever, class size. Another level of dollars. And I'm not saying you. I'm just saying.
no, but I
we
think
as
the
a
board
board.
has to kind of
Exactly. Look,
decide where
but-
you land on it.
And Maureen, don't take anything I'm saying,
No,
it's not a criticism on you. I'm saying all of us, everyone on this board is responsible for this to create, and you're someone that's just really kind of, hell, you're part of the team. You're not
Right.
like the person who's got to drive it all.
No,
Please
we're
don't
trying to
take
give
this
you all
as
different
criticism.
options, but I think at this point, as we're moving forward, I'm trying to understand we've provided the information of the different options you can go. And I would agree with you, there's a decision you have to make, because certainly you don't have to, you can say, listen, if the class sizes are such, we just have to have a little bit higher class size. And there are things we can do within the existing footprint of the building.
Right.
But I do think you have to understand that you will have to make those decisions then, if you decide not to address it somehow, whether it be through a trailer or through a renovation.
I actually have a question for Veronica. If Amy spoke about the class capacity in the cafe that currently exists, what would be the student number capacity in the potential cafeteria if we built one out? And I'm just thinking in terms of affecting programming.
Sure. I actually have the floor plans here, so let me take a quick look. Megan, is that 2,800? My eyes are way older than Megan's.
4,400.
No, that's the new cafeteria. You're talking about the existing
She was saying the new
cafeteria.
cafeteria
I'm
would
saying that if-
300.
Oh.
With the new one, what
Oh,
would
I'm
be
sorry.
the student capacity?
Oh, the student capacity in the new cafeteria is 300 students.
300?
300,
And what is it now?
130.
yeah.
Double.
So that potentially
So potentially
changes.
2 grades.
So potentially two grade
Two grades
levels
at the
could
same
use
time.
the cafeteria at the same time, affecting other aspects of the program. Yeah.
And
So Doug-
it's good, but it's that kind of stuff that I just don't have a
Yes,
vision for
exactly.
what's the implication of that.
Exactly.
That's the hard thing for me to wrap my head around right
See,
now.
I think we're sort of in between these different places where, I can't even put this all together, but where there's the architectural piece of this, there's the wish list and the knowledge, the really detailed knowledge that you guys have about Hillside, about what's there, what we need, what we've done, what takes place in every nook and cranny, literally. There are different people's awareness and knowledge of certain areas and experience with Hillside. There's Maureen's overview of everything. There are issues like what the numbers are and what do we do with that. And I think we have to figure out a way to sort of pull, and we probably know more than a lot of people in the community, and we're going to have to think about how are we going to communicate all of this in a way that's going to make sense to the community, and we're going to have to do this pretty soon. And yet it feels, I hear what you're saying, it feels like we're sort of all over the place, and how do we bring it together so that we can look, we have to take the big variables that we need to look at. I think what you said, Doug, about going back and kind of seeing how we got to where we are now and taking a broad kind of overview, and you know, I keep thinking, like, of course, if I were Amy and I was at Hillside, I would want to have I would want to do an addition, a big addition. I mean, why wouldn't you want to be able to do everything, to provide everything that you need? And then we have to balance, then there's the need, and then there's the reality of what are we going to be able to do, and how are we going to get to this place. It feels a little all over.
Yeah, no, it does feel a bit all over, and it feels a bit as if I certainly appreciate the discussion around impending potential enrollment issues. I certainly appreciate the discussion around tightness of existing space. But even with both of those two items, what's not, I think, being communicated, or at least what I'm not getting, is the absolute requirement to do this now, right? And I'm not by any means suggesting we don't do it, but there's a gap between you coming in and saying the school doesn't work in its current state. That would be one possible message, right? And then the next, that's not the message. So the message that we're at is it's tight. It's really tight, and we're looking at vertically oriented refrigerators rather than horizontally oriented refrigerators. So we're not at the school doesn't work. We are at tight, and we're at a future state which may or may not
Which
occur.
could be bursting type.
Which could be
It's not
bursting.
even bursting. I mean, I'm just explaining even what's going on next year. And again, I know this construction is not going to affect next year, but I think as we go through this bond project, and even if it were to remain the same, you're going to continuously, these are real issues we're dealing with the building that require meeting with the teachers, meeting with the teachers. A lot of people are affected by it. They feel it affects. So I've heard from the FLES, including the chair of the foreign language department, who said this has been very detrimental to the instruction of FLES. So I mean, these are things.
So let me just finish my thought, which is simply from a schematic point of view. The idea of the library being in the place of the cafe and a cafeteria that fits twice the size, these are gorgeous ideas. They're just, if we had a check to write, I would love that. It's such a beautiful space. It's got great light. It's right when you walk in. It would be fantastic. I guess as a board member who's not in the nitty gritty, and I just want some better assistance to get from, we're not at building is dysfunctional. We are at building is tight. And one of the proposals is this gorgeous thing that just feels like, man, I would love to have that, but how can I, in good faith, as a steward of taxpayers' money, jump from we're not, from what I started with to that? And that's really my ask. And I'm asking that of the architect. I'm asking that of you, and just put yourselves in our positions where, help me understand why we're supposed to get to that state.
I actually have some information that might be helpful. The way I see it in regard to space is that there are two great challenges that we have in the immediate future. One is next year. So next year we're going to be short on classroom space. As a result, we have no choice but to either put our specials on the road, which is going to impact our programming, or to increase class size, which is going to impact our instruction. So that's the immediate challenge. I think that having additional classrooms is an absolute in order to maintain the programming as it is. So Can we survive with the way it is and just being tight? Sure, we can put our specials on the road, but you have to anticipate that your students are not going to have the opportunity to play instruments in the way that they've had the opportunity. They're not going to necessarily have the space to dance the way that they've had the space to dance, because there are classroom furniture in their classrooms. That's going to impact our music program. In the same way, our art program, there's so many supplies that are right in the art room. It would be unrealistic to expect our art teacher to be able to mix paints, for each class on a cart, and then there'd be time in between having to rush to another place. So the projects and the opportunities that our students have will be directly impacted. That's not to say there can't still be art and there can't still be music. There certainly can be, but the quality of those programs will be impacted.
And can I just ask to understand, I'm sorry, just do a follow-up to that question, which is just, is this, what is the one or two drivers, like the class size, the big class is the third grade, right? K and 1 have been fairly run-of-the-mill class sizes, so next year is different than this year, and this year is tighter than last year. So what exactly is the driver of this increased tightness, given that the last 2 years of students are average?
So in the past years, we've always had at least one section of 5 classes. So this year, every grade is at 6, and one grade is even higher. That could potentially, based on your decision, be a split to 7. So our numbers are just increasing. We had, last year, I believe we had 596 students, and this year we have 629. So we just have more students at the school.
Special ed, you said.
And then you also have a special ed classroom you have to put back next year, so that's the driver of the other classroom.
So are you saying next year all art and music would go on a cart?
So it would
based on your
depend-
projections? Because
Well, it would depend on your decision here at the board as far as class size.
First class size.
So if class size, if you raised class size, for example, then no. Then we could keep our special areas in their classroom, but we would have to have more students in our classroom. So
because potentially it would be third grade moving to fourth, that's that large class size that we would need an extra section.
Correct.
So that's one other classroom.
plus the communications classroom if
So
they
that's
came
two
back.
classrooms.
Yep.
Plus the FLES. So I mean,
But
again, that
no,
would be
we're
two
already short
additions.
the
Yeah,
FLES.
so
So
you
I'm
need
saying,
more
would
spaces.
we cut both music and art onto a
Well,
cart to accommodate those two classrooms?
So we have 2 music classrooms and 1 art classroom. So we have a total of 3 classrooms. So somebody would have to be impacted.
Okay.
I just want to raise, no matter what, this is going to happen next year, and the year after, and the year after that, and the year after that, because whatever we do with the bond is not going to happen, it's not going to be realized until 4 or 5 years from now. But my other question is, you were saying with certainty that we will be short an additional classroom next year. That's because of the incoming special ed, but we don't know with certainty what our kindergarten classroom is. So I guess my question is, do you know something I don't?
No, but
About
last year we had 6
kindergarten
kindergartens. This year we have 6 kindergartens. So if we were to continue, and based on Maureen's projections, the numbers are going in a positive direction, not a negative
So there's the
direction.
presumption you're making that the kindergarten will remain
At
6
6.
sections. Okay.
Correct.
I mean, based upon the projections, and again, the only reason even Amy's talking about third grade, because the board here, including I think Nanisha, like you brought it up that, wow, like I'm surprised we didn't split it this year, the third grade. I know
Right.
you had said that, there's a concern out there, I don't have a child there, but I guess there's a concern amongst the third grade parents of that cohort being very large.
They're large class
Yeah.
sizes.
And
My
if it
question-
grew, then you'd be, I don't know if the board
24.
would go above the
With no aides.
25 or 26 a class.
27.
But again, to Dr. Wilson, we talked about that too. We could have larger class size and higher aides, but that is a higher operational cost than but hiring a teacher. It's more to hire aides in a classroom. It's just more costly. But
And
we
are
could
we
do that to save
certain
the space.
That for communications, because you said that we changed sort of the range for the 36 months
Well,
that
she had
was
said that, but
K2.
based upon the cohort of CPSC children that Laura has, and even this year, right, Amy, we could have technically we had a student we had to send out because of not having the full.
I'm
right,
not sure about that.
I know, I don't want to get into specifics, but I think I would say that
So
based
that's
upon what I've been
most
told by
likely
Laura and
happening.
Tessa, based upon, I don't know who these, the children are, they do, based upon what they anticipate 2 communications classes next year.
And maybe
But I
I'm
don't-
having trouble reading. I'm looking at some
Yes.
of the enrollment data.
Yes.
I know we've been working
Sure.
here off this presumption that there's a jump from 3rd to 4th, but I think I'm not seeing it. I have enrollment data in front of me.
But
from
you might not have
13
the most.
No, this is historical. 13-14 to 14-15,
have
we
it right
went
here.
from 132 to 100.
Wait, can I just pull mine out, Lisa? before you-
Yeah, sure. This was dated October 2017, but I'll just tell you, it starts in 2013 and finishes in 2018. And we see 2013, the 3rd grade was at 132, and it goes to 130 as a 4th grade.
Okay, what
Same
year
year,
is that?
one-
I don't see it.
10/23/17. We gained, let's see, went from 113 to 118, 127 to 125. Here's one that actually made a big jump, 99 to 108, and then 2017 to projected 2018 stayed the same. But all I'm saying is I'm not seeing that jump reflected in the actual data. I'm
Well,
happy
I'm
to send
looking
this to anybody who wants. We can append this to the minutes.
Okay, and I'm saying this is actually, and I updated based on beds information. I don't know, are you working off of this one?
This is something I got from the district, and it's, like I said, it says 2013-14, 2014-15, 2015-16.
Well, I'm just, because I did update these numbers, and I'm looking at, if you look at the third grade.
I think we need to deal with these numbers.
No, I know, but I mean, I don't know which one you're looking at, Lisa, but I know that at least in the last 3 years, and I just said it was for the last 3 years, and I even said I don't know why we've experienced it. We have had from third to fourth grade a 5 to 7 student uptick in the last 3 years, in every year.
2015-16 to 16-17?
You're looking at third, well, I went from.
Third to fourth went from 127
So
to
to me, this is
125.
about another.
123 to 128, 101 to 108.
This is weird. Let's send each other our
Yeah.
pictures.
I mean,
this is from our school website. Let's.
Which one are you looking at?
You know what? It's a photo I took of it, so I'm not sure. But
Okay.
let's look at each other's.
Yeah, because
So
I
think
updated
this is
this on
about
beds.
another sidebar issue that I had written down earlier, that at some point or somewhere, we need to have a bit of a discussion about class size, because I think that's one of the issues that's behind all of this, right, in terms of space. And so I don't think we need to take the time now,
Yeah,
but
I
I
think
do
we're-
think we need to have a time and space where all of us, or some piece of this group, talks about it, or talks about it with the community even, but.
I think, I would just say this, and I think it's getting late, and I think we gotta keep motoring, but I think we're unearthing some of the key stuff here, and I know it's late, and I know it takes a little while, but just to, I guess, kind of reiterate, like, I certainly appreciate where you and John are coming from in terms of operationally what it's like, and it unearths, exactly as you said, some big issues, the class size issues we're talking about, some FLES issues we're talking about, and as a board, we have to get to kind of a shared understanding and shared vision, because that will really dictate the types of the types of decisions we're making. Some of those decisions may be monetary in terms of scope of work. Some of those decisions may be philosophical in terms of classrooms, et cetera. So I know this is long and it's late, and it almost feels like, well, we didn't get to the great aha moment where we're all walking out, we're going to do this. But I don't think the time was used. I think the time was used well. I think we've sort of begun pulling back a few layers of the onion, if you will.
Well, can I just check
Yeah,
to see where are we in the because I think we're doing this every board meeting. So we're, as Tim said, we're peeling an onion. And where are we in the presentation just for tonight? Were there some other things?
There's, I think, three quick
more
slides
slides.
left, yeah, so
Okay.
it's probably less than 5 minutes.
All right.
So I believe that you were looking at potentially just what it looked like for a smaller addition, just the classrooms without the just a smaller addition without the cafeteria addition on it. So this would just be the small addition without the cafeteria, the 2 classrooms, the elevator, and the corridor on the upper level or the main floor, and then at the lower level, just the extension of it. So very similar to what you were looking at before. And that's the cost for that was,
You had the 3.6.
yeah, 3.6 million.
So if that's the case, what is sort of the discount of doing, say, 4 instead of 2? Or anytime you deal with multiple structures that are put together, there should be some economy of scale. What is it here?
I'd rather give you a accurate number as opposed to guessing. It's not, as we said, talked about earlier, it's not like just splitting the number in half, because you're still going to be adding the elevator in there, but I'd like to come back and look at that. I think that it's...
But I mean, is that a mythology, or is that really, is there money?
No,
gonna
well,
do
yeah,
this
you're absolutely correct.
penny into
That's a
pound.
good point. Now I understand the question. Yeah, the larger you build, the cheaper it is. So the more you construct, the less the square foot cost will be, because there's certain overhead costs or certain costs that you're going to have no matter whether it's a small project or a large project. So conceivably, you could have a very small building or building addition that could easily run $500-600 a square foot because it's such a small building. And if you were building something that was much larger, the square foot cost would be much cheaper. So yeah, there is an economy to scale.
One of the things not to be overlooked here, by the way, because I've worked in districts that had no land whatsoever, but you're doing this on land that you don't have to buy or otherwise
Correct.
acquire. Something to think about.
Sure. And then the last two slides, I believe one of the things that you wanted to look at was potentially what would the front of this building look like if the middle school auditorium was converted into classroom space. And one of the requirements that SED has is that classrooms are required to have windows 50% of one of the outside walls, and they have to be at, depending on the type of classroom and the age of the kids that are in the class, the bottom, the windowsill or window stool has to be 32 or 40 inches above the finished floor. So we're just looking at two different options for what the front of this building potentially could look like if there were classrooms, classrooms up in the auditorium as opposed to just the auditorium space. So just one with an arched window.
Because I did, say to Veronica, I think we do have to be considerate that the facade of this building would change, and there would be people, if it wasn't done correctly, that would not be, it does change the aesthetics of the outside of the building.
Which view is that?
That's from Farragut.
From Farragut, looking at...
That's just looking where the...
Right now over here, it's where those three large circles are.
Yeah. The library's right below it, the band.
So those would come out. So I think, those are things as you talk, and I know Veronica's gonna, we're gonna meet again this week, because there is some, I know that even something small like that, like the aesthetics of an old building like this, when you're removing kind of an architectural detail, to think that that's not gonna be a big deal would be a mistake.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it is a requirement by SED, and you do have to have the windows in there, so we'd have to figure out somehow to...
Part of the building that we're in now.
If that's true about the windows, would then some of the classroom spaces that we've repurposed in Hillside be against that compliance? Because there are spaces that we're using.
It depends on whether or not it's like a resource room or a small instruction space as opposed to a regular classroom. So you do have a little bit of flexibility with that.
We do look at that because it was one of the rooms we didn't use for that reason, because it didn't have a window, didn't have...
And sometimes you can, one of the things SED will require, what may permit if you're constructing new spaces, potentially like a skylight or something like that in order to let some natural light in, so... And that's all that I have for tonight. Any other questions?
Can we submit that secret, or is that still an open?
So
that's in our business item.
It's in our business item tonight. So we're going to approve H2M to start the process of that, and then at the conclusion is when you get the full resolution saying that we're, the lead agency, and that we find that there's no issue.
And I can stay for that part if you need me to stay, I can stay until you talk about that part.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
I just want to say about this, and I know that we have this on our agenda for every board meeting. I do think, I'm speaking from the experience of going through the last bond. I don't know what you think, Maureen, but I think at some point we should also think about scheduling just a community meet. I don't think a lot of people will necessarily come to board meetings to hear about it, but I really think maybe when we get just a little further, we need to have some kind of a community forum where we can present everything and explain everything. It's just my
but you have to kind of get, I think, I would agree, but what you have to kind of get further along and what you think it's going to be. Because I think right now, and again, as we just discussed tonight, obviously there's pros and cons to doing each one of these, and you have to think about all the different impacts of it. And then, financially, obviously, for me, there's a piece the trailer would be, for me, looking at the money, but I just don't think that would be a great long-term solution personally. And I don't think a lot of people in the community would be like thrilled with that idea either. But I think, we have to be further along in this process. So we may need to have additional facilities committee meetings as we're doing it. But I think, anything you need in between the meetings that we're trying to show you the options, and then so either the board can decide, well, then the trailers are, we have to start narrowing, the focus. And certainly, we don't necessarily have to do it because, to all your points, we could live within the capacity. We just have to change some things we're doing. We could technically make it work, but.
Yeah, so let's talk about that in between meetings and figure out maybe there's some ways to advance some of this stuff in straw man format, straw person.
Well, let me ask you this. Is there a point person? So I think certainly this discussion was very helpful to me, and it's starting to, it takes a while to prime these slow cylinders and get them turning over. But they're starting to creak forward. So is Jeremy the point person here that I send my sort of thoughts to in terms of, or do you want it to go out to the whole board?
Well, typically, like you would send them
wanna
to the
go to-
facilities committee, like I know I get them from some board members, and then part of what you see tonight is when we start saying, well, we're looking at the PA system, because Lisa brought up some things that I was like, that's a good question, other people may have it. So as people have questions, we then present it to the whole
Sorry,
board.
I guess this is what I'm asking. Like, if we start to get does it make sense, let me ask it this way, does it make sense that we start trying to funnel in where we're individually thinking and why? I know Lauren did a great write-up of it. But it might not hurt that we all sort of do independently where what our trigger points are, what we sort of lean to, what with that dollar amount comes out, and that's a single document is formed, and it sort of gives an idea of where we individually are on this board, what we're leaning towards. Is that a way to go about this, or is that not an effective use of time? I don't know what you did with the grounds work.
This is very
6-8
different,
years
I
ago.
think, because I think, there was no doubt that the track was in terrible condition. There was no question that the Burke needed a the only question was the turf versus natural grass, because I think everything else was. No, that wasn't, but I think in terms of the idea that it needed to be done. Here is a little different, we don't,
But it was a
it
different
comes down to
feeling.
class size and other things.
The only thing is to say, Tim, I like your idea of all of us reporting in, but I feel like until we have the rest of the full presentation, I don't know how we can. I know we talked a lot about Hillside and those issues, but I feel like there's a lot of issues at the other two schools.
Right.
Yeah, we're going to present them
That's fair.
separately. We thought that each night,
And I
like
think
the
maybe
next
at
time the middle
conclusion of
schools
that,
come.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
idea. That's a good point.
Try to
It's a very good point. Okay.
And I
That's a
have
very
some
good point.
ideas too about how to pull. Sometimes people aren't good at just sitting down and writing in, like, oh, I have an hour after dinner, and like your brain's already shot, so you can't think
Yeah.
through it, right? But sometimes if you sit down and you do reach out and do it, like, Jeremy reaches out and let's sit down for an hour over coffee, and just like your brain starts moving. There's other ways I think we can start to get some of this. So I've got some thoughts and ideas, but I think creating more coming together will be valuable.
But I do think what's important, and I think Amy, we didn't talk that much. I know, Lauren, you had an opportunity to talk to Amy. If you do think about it even beyond the enrollment, anytime you do renovations, there's an opportunity to improve the existing space also. So I think it's like, it's part of it is driven on like the continuing need, I guess, to have classrooms to support smaller class sizes. But I think it also can open up opportunities like in the special education and other things that we don't currently have. So I think it's important to kind of keep all those in mind.
I think if we start getting it down to square feet and dollars, we do miss potentially a lot of
Yeah, no, I
educational
think
opportunities.
That's kind of like you touched on, and I
Right.
think Amy being here, and I know that we've had a lot of internal meetings. I think just like when we get to the middle school, you'll also see that there's a lot of other benefits beside the asbestos abatement that we gain from doing that work. There's a lot of things that would help improve the flow of this building by being able to repurpose existing spaces, because as you gain space, you can then repurpose existing spaces. So I think part of the thing for Hillside to consider is it does allow for like a really beautiful music suite to be constructed. There's a lot of other parts of it, existing rooms that I would say are not ideal for students that would be able to be, fixed. So it's enrollment driven, but it's program driven also.
It's critical?
Say that again?
It's critical?
No.
Okay.
All right.
Let's keep moving then. Next, we're going to move off of, there'll be tons of opportunities. Sorry, Joey, to cut you off like that. Tons of opportunities to continue this conversation. Now we're going to move into public comment. Does anyone in the public have a comment?
Rob, anything?
No, I actually have a comment, and I'm sorry.
Are you sure, Senator?
Don't be sorry. The female prosecutor to come.
Yeah, right. Rob McQueen, live in Hastings. I think there's a couple of things, and I'll keep it just to the bond because it is late, and I'll send some emails on some of the other things. But I think the community does need clarity on this now versus 5 years from now, right? Because as Dr. Wilson knows, I was educated in elementary school in a portable classroom, and it was fine, but I was in 6th grade. Much different than a 4th grader, I think. So that is something that I wasn't thinking about before tonight that I think we have to think about. But 5 years from now, it'd be great to have a whole big new addendum to the building, but we need something now, because I would say, Tim, if I was in Amy's place, I'd tell you, school's not working right now.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not in elementary school anymore in Hillside, but I don't think it works. I think we need a ton. And I would ask you, my comment is, be aspirational, be fearless, be innovative, push out there. You can go to Mars and come back to Moon later, but bring 5th grade back to Hillside. That's what I would look at.
What was the
Because we need the space at Farragut. 5th grade deserves to be at Hillside on that campus. 5th grade is a elementary school grade, not a middle school grade. I'm watching 5th graders right now really challenged, not just, and please don't think I'm talking just about my child. I'm talking about a lot of kids that are struggling in 5th grade because they don't deserve to be in a middle school. They deserve to be in an elementary school. So if you're going to think about spending $10 million, if you're going to think about building onto that campus, I would think about what that means and what that would take to bring 5th grade back, and then what does that do? I'm Italian. What does that do for the middle school and high school campus? Because we do talk about these two campuses separately, as much as we might hate to do that, we do. So I would ask you to look at that. So clarity on portables versus the big build, the new build, because of now versus 5 years from now, but also think about really going out there. I think the field the track and the football field looked fantastic. I wasn't here for that whole discussion, but that's a place of pride now for this community, not just for this school, right? I live by there. People are on that track and using those facilities all day, every day. The kids get there, the phys ed, obviously the student athletes are getting benefit, but the community does too. So the fact that you went out there and really built something special, I think, Tim, and I think for what you were saying, Doug, qualitatively, I would like to see us my comment would be, look a little bit out there. Yeah. We pay a lot of money in taxes, and we have nothing compared to what most of our surrounding communities have. We need to push to that. We need a great superintendent. Facilities help you get that, right? The extras help you get that. We want to be able to spend more money. It's because the community can see what we're spending it on. So I think just putting Band-Aids on seems like we're past that a little bit. So I would just ask for us to look a little bit further on.
Thank you.
So I do have something I want to say. Oh, go ahead.
No, we'll finish on your comment, Jody.
This is not crucial, but I thought about it before, and this does follow on that. And I know I've raised it. I just want to know if this is out of the question, but the idea was raised of whether we could use St. Matt's, take St. Matt's and make...
I responded to that.
Yeah.
It's been sold.
Sold.
Oh, I guess I missed that.
Yeah, I said that in the beginning.
Yeah.
A special act sport.
Special act sale program, it's like, that's in right now.
Yeah,
but-
Ferncliff Manor.
Yes.
To me, Rob, that was part of how we bring 5th grade back to Hillside, which I agree with you, they should be at Hillside.
And just, when we had that committee last year, I don't know if, not all the board members attended all the time, but actually a lot of the members on that committee who had Hillside and middle school children, they also had said, we would love you to do an extension in Hillside to bring 5th grade back. So.
But the Hillside extension we're talking about doesn't even allow us to bring
No,
Hillside.
I know, but I mean, that, they kind of said what Rob
Yeah.
said, that do a bigger one and get
I would just say, though, to Charlie's point about we have land to build on, and so it's more cost efficient because you don't have to buy land, you can also go vertical. We're not in any
We could not do
way
the cafeteria. and
using
build-
our vertical
We could
space
build
at
6
all.
classrooms without doing a cafeteria. That's just.
You could, but you could go vertical
Oh, yeah,
too
you
on
could-
the
you could
space
go-
we
you could go
have.
above,
So
yeah, you could do a second
if
floor.
you put 5th grade back, 5th grade could absolutely go into another floor because they're already doing that at the middle school today.
You're right.
So you could look at the footprint, but you can also go vertical with your space.
Everyone,
Yeah,
no,
to,
let's no, we're rolling. We're rolling. Put a pin in it, keep it. Okay, quick.
How did we do 5th grade before? Like, how were we able to do kindergarten to 5th grade before?
I don't think we have.
It wasn't Hillside, I think it moved in like the early 90s down to Farragut before. By the time I came, I started working in 96. And
It was I think it moved the middle to late 90s.
I heard it was like in the 1990 that the
Just-
5th grade had to move here.
Smaller number of students, or I don't understand
97,
how.
I think my son's class might have been the first one.
Bigger
that
class
went
sizes,
outside.
But there was a dip, I think the
97,
lowest
98.
enrollment, right?
Yeah, okay. It's around 97.
Okay, guys, we're gonna keep moving here, okay? We're gonna keep moving here. Okay. So someone will look into that question that Jeremy had, just to better understand how 5th grade was at Hillside at one point.
But there was a time our enrollment went, when I first came to the district in 1996, I think our enrollment was 1,100 students district-wide.
So smaller,
Yeah.
total enrollment. I want to take a second
I know the
because
answer.
Clay, you're doing yeoman's duty here, hanging out. Do you feel free? It's 10 o'clock. I know you have school. And did you want to say anything? Nothing tonight.
Well, what's going on? How's it? You know, years started up. How's it going? It feels good. All right. All right. All right. All right.
Are you going to need a late pass?
But Clay was at homecoming. He was representing. He was representing the culinary club.
Oh, great.
That homecoming was good. I think that was a great event. It was nice to see everybody. All right. Let us know if anything. You know.
And feel free to I know it's late and you got to get to school tomorrow.
Gotta go
so
home and
feel
do your
free
homework.
to go ahead and take off. If you want to hang out, that's up to you. You can, but I just want to give you an opportunity to leave if you want to now. Okay. All right. Thanks, Clay.
Thank you, Clay. Thank you for coming, and what we'll try to do going forward, because you know these are school nights for you, so the next one is the 22nd. After, you know, I think if you're okay with this, after the superintendent's update, we'll jump to you straight away, and you can give us an update on, you know, what's happening, whether it's what's happening in student government, if there were any sort of big, significant, you know, academic, athletic, whatever type of things that you want to just flag, because recognize you're speaking to the community when you're speaking to us, and it's just an opportunity. You're the voice of students. I don't know why we had that oversight tonight, but we'll bring you forward early so you can get it out there, and then you can get home and get to work. So sorry about keeping you late. Thanks, brother.
Thanks, Clay.
Thanks, Tim.
Okay. So on to business items. 5A.
Doug, I'm sorry, there's two I had asked Maureen about that I think I'm going to ask to pull.
That's, you know, and I just want to, sorry.
But let me just say
You're
what
talking about
my
the business.
problem was.
You're talking about B. I was just wondering A, 5A. Can
No,
we
I'm
take
talking
those
about
together?
A. I'm talking
Oh, you
about
are?
A.
Oh, it
There were
switched
two
on mine for some
contracts in
reason.
there, one from Nicole Tocco and one from GNR Group. It's the same problem I had with Gravity Goldberg's contract 2 years ago. They're so incomplete that they're really, I'm not giving you a legal opinion, but we don't even know what the services are. It just says for professional development, and there's really no way to judge whether the performance is actually what we're paying for. And one of them is pretty pricey, so I would vote no on those contracts because I don't think those contracts protect the district.
I'm actually like kind of cool with that. I would just love to see what those, like, I looked at the contract, I would just love to know what they're doing.
Right, so I did get Lisa's comment. Actually, I had to wait to kind of review it with special ed, but I will tell you that is our boilerplate contract that initially was provided to us by our attorney. So, like, as an example, I would agree with the J&R inclusive group because I know they provide the ICT training in the classrooms. And I had said to Laura, even if there was a way to supplement the contract with, like, as per attached, we'll provide these services.
All it needs to be is like 2 lines just
Right.
describing what they're
Right.
doing. That,
Right.
You know,
So
just
so
that
that's
it
fine.
has
We can pull those, but
enforceability.
I can tell you that Nicole is kind of a singleton. She actually was a leave replacement for us a few years ago as a so she may not
Just
have
has
the.
to describe what she's
Okay.
doing. 1 line.
They're just
2
doing
lines.
parent training and counseling. I thought that was included in the
I
contract.
didn't see it. I may have missed
It says in the first,
And that's IEP.
counseling. It said parent counseling,
literally
but
it
it
says
didn't say what it
it
was.
says 6.5 hours.
Yep.
And then it says, you know, it says one sentence like parent training
I mean,
and counseling, and I just didn't know what that.
I mean, the only thing I would ask is that is just something that's on students' IEPs, and that
But it
requires.
needs to be in the contract.
Okay.
And we're not
I thought
saying
it
she's not
was,
doing
though. I thought it
If
was.
we're signing a
Okay.
legal document to
Yeah,
pay her
I
for
understand.
services, we need to define what those services
Mm-hmm.
actually are that she's providing. Again, it doesn't have to be great detail.
I
but
actually
just
think your point is right, which is just like an attachment to,
Right.
which just gives a layperson's terms, 2 or 3 sentences of what the actual service is.
Yep. I thought with Nicole's it was included, I thought it did say to provide parent training and counseling.
So from a practical perspective.
Well, I would say that Nicole's, I would prefer you to approve, only because if we owe her money, she's a singleton.
Can we approve these subject to getting a short addendum on each of those two?
Yes. The J&R we can definitely, because there's a good description of theirs.
Make sure the district is protected, that's all that is.
And I think for my purpose, I just don't know what parent training and counseling is, which is just my own lack of knowledge,
Right.
but just a small attachment would be great.
Okay. I'll ask Laura just to provide, that is something that's occasionally on a child's IEP.
Okay, so on the secret stuff, did we want to just talk a little bit about that, what that is, or?
Yeah, I would just ask Veronica to speak to it. I put a little memo there trying to describe what we're doing here.
So when we had originally talked about SECRA, we thought that the process, we always want to be the most conservative and assume the worst case scenario, which is the longest time frame.
I know what it is, but just
of course, absolutely.
Explanation of what SECRA is, because not everybody knows.
Absolutely. SECRA is the State Environmental Quality Review Act, and part of the process of going forward with a bond, you're required to do an environmental assessment on the project, and as a result, you will declare yourselves the lead agency once we provide you with a recommendation based on the environmental impact on the project.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So when we initially look at the secret timeline or schedule for projects or bond projects, we always want to assume the worst case scenario based on whatever the scope might be, because we want to make sure that we're allotting enough time for it. So the worst case scenario would be a type 1 assessment and or type 1 declaration, and that typically takes about 3 months for that process. However, and so that's what we plan for and budgeted for in your schedule. However, as our planners start to look at it and start to preliminarily review some items, she feels that you'll probably be either a type 2 or an unlisted, and that actually, it means that it's, well, first of all, it's much cheaper to do that assessment, and 2, it's a much shorter time frame. So it's literally something that our planner can get done within the next couple of weeks, or it'll be done by the end of October, and we'll be right on schedule for the district to present the information to the district, and for the district to declare themselves the lead agency with some sort of negative impact, either unlisted or type 2 negative. So I'd say early in November, and this is inclusive of all of the work that has been contemplated so far. I'll say excluding the temporary classrooms, so I'll just make sure that she's aware of the temporary classrooms if that's potentially something that the district is considering, because we want to make sure that we're covering all the potential areas, and potentially even moving the playground, so we get all of that in there just so that you're covered no matter what you decide to move forward with. So
are we paying, are we essentially agreeing to pay the money for the effort of a type 1? Whether or not we use it? Is that
No, actually, no. So a type 1, she goes through we go through, the planner goes through the process of the entire evaluation. If it turns out, as she's reviewing the different permit requirements, and it's determined that a type 1 is needed, and she's not expecting that at this point, then it would actually, we would come back with an additional proposal for additional services for that continued assessment. But she's very comfortable at this point that meets the requirements, so and that cost.
$2,300 now. If it turns out to be a more detailed type 1 analysis, it's going to be additional money.
Correct.
Got it. Okay.
And we don't feel that that would be the case, though. But
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else have further questions on it? Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Would you like to now, or you could leave?
No, thank you you put in a lot of time. Thank you. You're good.
Thanks, Veronica.
You're good. Thanks.
Good night. Thank
Does
you.
anyone have any further questions on items 1 through 11?
I don't have a question, but I'm excited that our website is going to have a review and potential revamp, the number 11.
Yeah. It's, looking forward to that, so it should be helpful. Great, so...
ACDS Westchester, the proposal, who brought them in? Whose idea was
On which one was that?
The professional development. Is that is that Lauren?
That's Laura.
Yeah, Laura
Yes.
found it.
Yep.
Okay, I just read through it and all right,
Yep.
cool.
So can I have a motion to take items 1 through 11 as a consent agenda with the caveat that we're going to get some extra language around those two, right?
Yes.
Okay. A second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. 5B. Do I have a motion to accept the placement for CSE?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay. Personnel, does anyone have any questions about 6? Doesn't look like there's any resignations. Oh, there are 2 resignations, yeah. 6A, B, or C?
Jeremy, do you have to recuse yourself from 3?
I was waiting for
No, I'm
somebody to say
seriously, I'm serious.
I don't know. I mean, what I would.
I don't mean for personal things, I mean for,
Yeah, you can abstain. You can abstain, and we'll go ahead.
Yeah, I can abstain, but I want to make sure that this is not, is that when I know Tim recused himself from.
Yeah, from finance. Yeah, from.
I want to make sure that me recusing.
Well, not on negotiating team, I think.
Anything with, yeah.
Teachers' contracts or something?
Like that, that's not about a specific person.
well, that I don't know if you're
By
supposed
law,
to.
you don't have to recuse yourself.
Okay, so
Yeah,
then you
no,
don't.
it's.
Yeah, you don't have to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, does anyone have any further questions?
If we want to read,
Doesn't have to.
the ethics, what?
I think he doesn't have to. We looked at it last year with Tim, right?
Okay.
He doesn't.
Yes, because technically your wife's on the Schedule B, Tim, this time, so like you would.
Oh, yeah.
So you better. No, I'm just thinking now as he was saying.
So basically, it says that 2/3 of the board approve to appoint someone who is a family member or someone, 2/3 of the board has to say that,
It's different situations.
right, but they don't, I think it's going to have to be clarified by the attorney somewhat also.
Okay. I thought we run by her last year, but I guess we'll see. again.
I had some issues where we were voting on people who my family employed.
that's right. You
And
did
I-
abstain,
I
yeah.
But that was an elected
I
position.
recused myself. Yeah, I mean, my understanding honestly is that New York is very lenient, like, Tim could legally vote on a teacher's contract, even though it impacts him financially. Legally, he is allowed to do that. It's his decision whether he does. And so, Jeremy, it's really just your choice. I chose to abstain or recuse myself on those just because, I'm doing belt and suspenders. But I don't think there's anything right or wrong. And again, it's not a relation at this point.
Okay, do you want to vote on it? Okay, let's take 6A, B, C as a consent agenda.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, great. Minutes. Does anyone have any questions about August 27 or September 17 minutes? No? Okay. Do I have, can I have a motion to accept 7A and B?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
We need Donna.
Okay. Okay, policy?
The policy committee met last week, and it was our first meeting of the year. The minutes are attached. I don't have to go into them with much detail other than to let you know that there are 2 pieces of policy that were recommended by NYSBA to be updated that are with our legal counsel for review. And there are 2 pieces attached to the agenda under new business further down in the agenda for your first read. So there's no need for discussion of those policy pieces right now, but if you can take a look at those pieces at the next meeting, we can vote on the 2 policy pieces attached and discuss them then, if necessary.
And thank you, Lauren, and thank you, Nanisha, for
Yeah.
taking on this committee.
Right, and thanks for these notes.
Everyone's minutes are so good this year. It's like, I mean, really, it's very thorough.
It's so helpful.
It does.
It's really,
It really
it's
does.
really,
Makes, hopefully the meetings will start,
Yeah, no,
reasonable
absolutely. It's
faster.
really great.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. So we will review that and vote next time.
Yep.
Second public comment? Doesn't seem like, no, public, no?
We
No,
can't.
Board of Ed, no, we missed over charitable contribution. I see, this is what got me messed up. Policy's in here twice.
Yeah, no, I got confused too.
Well, one says a
How
committee
about old
report and one
business?
is a new
That's
business,
why I was
that's
like, wait a
right.
minute.
You skipped over here.
Charitable contribution. So Lisa, do you want to?
Yeah, I'll give you the update. We have a glitch, but I believe it's a workable glitch. My 60-second summary is, as you know, we can't deduct our property taxes in the same way. New York State passed a law that said, hey, villages and taxing authorities, you can create some place where people can deduct tax, give you a donation, and get a one-to-one tax credit. So we said, great. The IRS came out with regulations that said, no, no, no. So Baker McKenzie, a national law firm, is willing to take this on. And right now, the stage we're at is these regulations from the Treasury Department are not yet adopted. They must go through this process, and the public can submit comments. So where I left it, I've been in touch with Assemblywoman Pollin's office quite regularly this past week. Baker McKenzie, the law firm, is still in the process of drafting the comments. And what will happen is, if we decide to sign on, we don't even have to do anything except call the Assemblywoman's office and say, put our name there. I wanted the comments here for us to look at, so we make sure that we're okay with them. They're not ready yet. So what I can throw out a couple possibilities. There are going to be legal challenges. There'll be, so say, for example, the IRS used to take position X, and now they're taking position not X. And they have to give an explanation for doing that according to the rules, and they didn't. That's point one. Point two. So legal technical arguments. What we can do is we can say, we can agree as a board, because we're not going to meet before these comments are due. They're due on the 11th. We can designate, say, a group of 3 of us and say that we will defer and allow these 3, if everybody agrees, then to go ahead and sign our name. I think that's what I would recommend that we do. I don't want to sign anything or commit us without seeing them. I'm assuming they're going to be really good, strong. I don't see this law firm messing this up at all. So maybe there's a group of 3 of us. And I will say, I just want to let you know the entities that have already agreed to sign on. I sent you an article this morning. Westchester County, the towns of North Salem, Newcastle, Bedford, and Rye, the Pleasantville School District, and that's run by Mary Alter Fox, who I think was the head of the superintendent's statewide last year. And most New York State Association of Counties, and most impressively, the New York State School Superintendents Association. So we're in good company. So that would be my suggestion. Let's take a vote now to, if people are cool with this, or we can discuss it, but I would suggest we take a vote to take a team of 3 of us, myself on it, of course. The 3 of us can talk. We don't violate open meeting laws, and that you are, if everybody's comfortable with. I'm getting the ability to be articulate. If everyone's ready to defer to us, then we could go ahead and say sign if we like the comment.
What's the downside of signing it?
I don't think there is any downside to signing.
Can we sign it without paying the $1,000?
Yeah, we can, right, we don't have to pay $1,000.
Because I know there's some question, some districts were saying that, what's the legality about giving it? You can't look as though you're trying to lobby, or we'd have to sign some type of contract to say we're they're providing us legal services because we don't really have the capacity to donate $1,000.
Then let's not donate.
I heard some of my colleagues, although they're willing to sign on, that was, I think I mentioned that to Charlie. That's the one piece I would just have to ask our legal counsel. Is it legal for us just to pay them $1,000 without any type of?
And I don't know if we want to do that or not.
Right.
And
I didn't know if that was a requirement. That was my question.
No,
Okay,
and Amy Paulin was very specific. It is not a requirement.
Yeah. I don't think
and
it'll make
Baker
a big
McKenzie is also excited about it. Look, if they win this is a big win for them.
Yeah, I know, that's big for them.
Yeah.
So I'm in favor of that. So
Okay.
I'm assuming you're going to be one of the 3?
Yeah, I should be one of the 3.
Does anybody else?
I promise you, all you have to do is just read and review. You don't have to go to any minutes or anything like that.
I'm happy to read and review. If I can just do it quickly over.
Yeah, I don't expect that it's going to be a big deal. Do we want to have one other person?
I'm happy to read and review.
Okay. So then the vote would be.
I'm happy to vote for the 3 of you to make a decision.
And by the way, thank you everybody, because this is an effort to help our taxpayers and to help us be able to have a robust budget and fundraise. So so do we need a motion? And I guess we do, because we're voting to sign this if we say. So I guess.
Well, I make a motion to have Lisa.
But not.
No, I think we're not.
If we found, I'm not saying, I just think that's just one piece. I just had to call them, so I didn't know if that was I'm going to call them anyway, Lisa, because there's, districts may decide to do it if we're allowed to, that's
Yeah,
fine.
and we can
I
talk
think it's
about it
fine.
later, but it's not
the money,
it's not a
just the
prerequisite
process,
now.
that's all.
Okay.
Okay, so can I have a motion for Doug, Lisa, and Tim to review the
Post comments by Baker
coming out of Baker
McKenzie.
McKenzie with regard to charitable contributions.
So moved. And we'll sign on to the letter if we all agree. Okay.
So moved. Second? All in favor?
Okay.
Great. Any board comments?
I just want to say that I enjoy my Monday nights with you guys.
What'd you say?
My Monday nights with you guys. Actually, sorry, I do have a serious comment. This is going to take, I'm sorry,
I hope the last
I'm sorry,
one was
I
serious,
just,
and you like to start
No,
at
that was a
5:30
that was
instead
a-
of 6:30?
No, that was a serious comment as well.
We are,
They didn't vote on the policies
Right, we
next
didn't-
time, no.
Yeah.
on those two?
No, the policy is for first read.
First read.
Oh,
You
okay.
drafted this.
Thank you.
No, I know, but the question
Okay.
of bullets are no
It's time
vote.
for
It seems
tonight,
really
okay.
minor, but I just wanted to just,
Tim, I just don't know how to do bullets. That's
oh,
what
fine, you're fine with bullets?
Yeah,
Okay, then
bullets.
fine,
I
then
just
give
don't know
it,
how to make
then give
them.
it back to me, then I'll just, so the question at hand,
Technicality.
the question at hand was this brochure.
I'd like to look at it anyway.
Yeah, sure, look at it.
Thank
So the question at hand was the brochure and using a bullet format or using a qualitative format. Lisa did a nice rewrite with some other information, but it was much more qualitative and sort of paragraph-based, where I think when we put something up on a website, it's just got to be bullets, bang, 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 bang. But as Lisa's just said, she's not wedded to bullets in any case. I'll go ahead and just kind of merge your draft in a bullet format. I'll put it out for distribution tomorrow, and we can just do.
Sure.
And
And because the only reason mine looks like the way it does is because that's the way my computer put it together.
Your responsibility.
I'll work some kind of merger of it and
Thank you.
get it out. So that's it. That's my
I
public
couldn't
comment.
make it pretty. So.
Okay.
Could I just add something here?
Yeah.
I don't have to be Dr. Jody Meyer on this.
No.
It's your doctor.
Well, I'm just saying,
It is inconsistent.
Okay.
it just looks strange to me. I am Dr. Jody Meyer, but there are not titles in this. So
you
you can
just
just,
lost your doctorhood.
I never lose my doctorate.
Okay. Think we're good here.
Okay.
Meeting adjourned.